Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for participating in this second session of the Symposium on Enhancing Public Health Management of Chemical Incidents through Collaboration with Poison Centers. My name is Claude Bouchard, Division Chief of the Chemical Emergency Management and Toxicovigilance Division of Health Canada. I will be the moderator for this today's session, and I will achieve this from Ottawa, where there is currently a major snowstorm. My day-to-day job consists of managing a team of scientists, epidemiologists, and project managers that are responsible for coordinating the response of Health Canada during a chemical emergencies and also for supporting the development of Toxicovigilance Canada. In addition, my team fulfills the secretariat role of the Chemical Event Working Group of the Global Health Security Initiative. We are supporting the organization of this symposium that is very meaningful for us and our provincial, national, and international stakeholders. We are very pleased that our partners of the Global Health Security Initiative endorsed this event hosted by Canada. This event started last week, and we invite you to click on the events webpage link that appears in the chat to watch the introductions and previous presentations. It will also allow you to obtain more information on the National Collaborating Center for Environmental Health. The acronym is NCCEH. They supported us for the organization of this symposium, and I invite Lydia, manager at NCCEH.
Thank you, Claude. Greetings, and thank you to everyone for joining us. I will take us through a few slides to explain logistics relevant to your participation. I wish to highlight where on the event webpage where you can find the link to access the video of Day 1 proceedings. For your convenient viewing, we place timestamp bookmarks on the video to enable you to view and or review specific segments of the recording. Today, we have 5 more notable case studies. You will hear shortly from an impressive roster of subject matter expert speakers, starting from those from Thailand, the United Kingdom, Chile, to be followed by 2 sets of experts from the United States. Our moderator, Claude Bouchard, will be introducing each speaker and will also facilitate the asking of Slido questions. For more details on our speakers, please go to the event website with this URL shown in the previous slides, or to view the link that my colleagues Barb Carlin and Julie West will be placing in the chat window. Here is our Day 2 agenda. We'll follow the same format as Day 1 of a 10-minute Q&A immediately following the case presentation. We'll have a scheduled break time between case study 5 and 6, and we plan to adjourn close to the 4-hour mark. Collecting your valued feedback is important to us. Our survey is now open, so kindly take a moment before it closes on February 28th to give us your opinion. The survey should take no more than 10 minutes to complete. My NCCH colleagues, Barb Carlin and Julie West, will post a link in the Zoom chat now. About certain Zoom features worth noting. First is that video and audio functions remain off for participants. To communicate with our host team, please use the Zoom chat function. For security reasons and to minimize disruptions, we as hosts will remove artificial intelligence, AI, meeting bots. If needed for accessibility purposes, participants can turn on the built-in transcript function on the Zoom toolbar. To do so, go to the Show Captions and click on the toggle up icon. Then select View Full Transcript. A side panel will then open next to the Zoom main window for you to follow along. We will continue to use Slido to handle our Q&A segments. Upon entering the Zoom room, you would have been prompted to open our event Slido. If you're clicked open, a side panel would have opened on your computer adjacent to your Zoom main window. As an option, you can point your mobile device to the QR code that I will show you in the next screen. On Slido, you can type your question either anonymously or with your name. Or if someone else had already asked your question, you can click on the upvote icon, which is a thumbs up, next to the question you want to see prioritized in the Q&A session. This will push the most upvoted questions to the top of the list for the moderator to present to speakers. The more upvotes a question receives, the higher it will appear in the list of questions. Other participants can also upvote your question. As mentioned, Day 3 is not to be missed since we have a total of 80 minutes of Q&A time. A final note about Slido. It will be kept open from today, February 13th, until 15 minutes prior to the symposium adjournment on February 20th, Day 3. This means that you can continue to access the Slido Q&A board to add your questions that may come up after you review the presentation recordings. This is the QR code to use to participate on Slido. We hope you will use or continue to use this function to take full advantage of our experts-led Q&A at this event. Thank you for being here today, and we look forward to welcoming you back on the final Day 3.
Perfect. Thank you, Lydia. We'll now begin the case study presentations. Today, we are excited to introduce another fantastic lineup of speakers. For more information on each speaker, please visit the webpage infopoison.ca/events. So the first case study presentation will highlight today an example of Poison Center Public Health Collaborative in Thailand on managing a recent methanol poisoning incident. The case study will be presented by Dr. Winai Wananukul, a clinical toxicology physician at the Ramatibodi Poison Center. Dr. Winai is a professor of medicine at the Faculty of Medicine of Ramatibodi Hospital and Medel University of Thailand. The presentation is also given by Dr. Bootsakorn Paisarnrodjanarat, a clinical toxicologist working with Dr. Pairoj during this incident. Unfortunately, Dr. Pairoj could not be available for today.
Hi, everyone. It is my honor to share with you a case study on managing a recent methanol incident in Thailand. My name is Winai Wananukul, a clinical toxicologist physician at the Ramatibodi Poison Center, Faculty of Medicine, Ramatibodi Hospital, Mahidol University. My co-speaker is Dr. Pairoj Surattanawanich, a general surgeon by training. He is currently the Deputy Director General of Medical Services at the Ministry of Public Health. Dr. Pairoj played a significant role as a chief commander during this incident. We have no conflict of interest to declare. In WHO Southeast Asia region, or CERO, we have 11 member states. 6 countries, or 55%, have poison center. There are 15 poison centers in this region. India have 9 poison centers. Thailand have 2. Nepal, Myanmar, Indonesia, Sri Lanka have 1 each. Among these poison centers, 13 poison centers receive government funding. 11 poison centers operate 24/7 services. These poison centers have a diverse range of service providers, including nurses, pharmacists, and physicians. The services they offer also vary significantly. Some offer comprehensive functions, including information service, clinical care, and laboratory services, while others offer only information or laboratory services. 7 poison centers are affiliated with clinical services. Others fall under faculty or department of pharmacy or forensic medicine. Only 7 poison centers have their own clinical unit to treat poison patients, and 7 poison centers have laboratory services. The methanol incident in Thailand started on August 22nd last year, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Ramatibodi Poison Center received a consultation call from a private hospital in northeastern part of Bangkok, involving a 31-year-old man with a chief complaint of headache and blurred vision for 2 hours. He reported upon waking up, he experienced headache, progressive bilateral vision blurring, and a sensation of breathlessness. On physical examination, he was conscious but hyperventilating and agitated. Shortly, he has seizure and became unconscious cardiac arrest, but was resuscitated successfully. Laboratory tests show high cap metabolic acidosis with normal blood glucose concentration. Later, his family reported that he consumed herbal liquor daily, with the most recent intake being the previous night. On the same day, Noparat Rajthani Hospital, a public general hospital in that area, received 2 patients with severe metabolic acidosis, prompting clinicians to recognize a potential methanol poisoning incident. Later, more cases were consulted to the poison center, and more patients came to Noparat Rajthani Hospital and private hospital in the area.
And the methanol incident in Bangkok, Thailand, and 2024, the last year, and Noparat Rajthani Hospital, a large medical facility located in the northeastern Bangkok, at the healthcare provider with capacity 650 beds and specialized in all fields in the general hospital. It became the focal point of methanol toxicity incident and received the initial wave of case. The first set of patients treated in the emergency room include 2 male patients who present during afternoon 22nd August 2024. The first case involved 47-year-old male underlying liver cirrhosis. He presents with lethargy, shortness of breath, and seizure. In the emergency room department, he experienced hypotension, non-massive upper GI gastrointestinal hemorrhage, and ventricular tachycardia, and review blood gas show acidosis. Resuscitation measure include fluid resuscitation, vasopressor duct intubation, and inject diazepam for seizure control, and then we synchronize cardioversion. And second case, male 69-year-old male with a history of hypertension. He presented with nausea, vomiting, dizziness, and visual disturbance, resembling bright flash of light. And at the emergency room, laboratory investigation review high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Both our patients had a history of consuming traditional herbal liquor. In Thailand, say Yadong from the local vendor in Hatailat Ali in the market not far from Noparat Hospital the day before symptom of onset. After taking through history, no other suspicious cause were identified. Based on the clinical presentation, history, and laboratory test, the medical team suspected methanol toxicology. And both patients were treated with intravenous fluid collection, metabolic acidosis, and emergency nephrologist consultation, And then we administration oral ethanol in the stable patient without gastrointestinal bleeding. Both patients be early hemodialysis within 6 hours after arriving at the hospital. Unfortunately, the first patient, 47-year-old patient, he died after Friday, and the latter due to cerebral edema and multiple organ failure. And the first patient laboratory testing revealed 342 milligram per deciliter at the 68-hour. And the second patient laboratory but methanol concentration is 25 milligram per deciliter at the 90-hour post injection. And the following day, next and afternoon, 23 August, two more patients present in the same emergency at Nopalat and the emergency room with the same sign and symptom consistent with methanol toxicology. Rising concern among emergency physicians about the potential methanol toxicology incident that could exceed the hospital capacity. At the same time, in Nopalat now at the 23 August, we have 4 patients, and near not far from Nopalat Hospital in the Nawamin 9 have the patient at the same clinical about 2 or 3 patients. And then now I concern that may have a lot of patients that may have a problem in this area. And then when in summary case, totally patient in this case there were total 44 cases, and there died 10 was die fatality. And among these cases, 25 patients received medical attendance at Nopalat Ratchathani Hospital. And 25 patients in the Nopalat, they die for cases from complication. Include that complication is brain edema, multiple organ failure, or sepsis. 19 patients, and another hospital die and sick and die. Sick patient and what die. Another hospital. Totally patient die is 10. The patient, I will follow up some patient evaluation and discharge from Nopalat Hospital, review 2 patients, long-term effect such as visual impairment and neurological abnormality. And I will say the response for incident. And when the emergency medical team at the Nopalat Ratchathani Hospital concerned that maybe potential of methanol incident, they tell the hospital director and tell to the Department of Medical Service. The Department of Medical Service then established an emergency operation center, EOC, at the Nopalat Ratchathani Hospital on the early morning 24 August and 2024 under the leadership of the Deputy Director General. The EOC team played a critical role in managing and mitigating the methanol toxicity outbreak. Key of success is the action undertaken by team. We will tell a step for response. The first is collecting data, the patient packing with and when at the 24 August have multiple data from another area, another hospital, and we collecting data. The team was set up centralized system and collect managing data for all affected patients. And the second is developing standardized treatment protocol to ensure consistent care. The team developed and distributed standardized treatment protocol for managing methanol toxicity across all cases. And the third, we providing public information and education. The team provided regular update on the situation and share toxicology knowledge with the public through television, broadcasting, and online platform. And then warning and safety recommendation were published. Were published to promote awareness and prevent more cases of methanol exposure. Then we planning and managing resource management. Proactive measures were taken to prepare for potential scenario. The team assessed the capacity of nearby hospital to accommodate overflow patient, and then we set creating hotline for public inquiry. A telephone hotline was established to provide information on methanol toxicity. The information including symptom, therapy, and hospital admission process, and the name of the patient. And then we developing an online self-assessment coordination with external agency during the methanol incident. The EOC team at the Nopalat Ratchathani Hospital also collaborate closely with several external authorities to control and manage this incident. This is the key of success in this situation. Here, how this agency collaborated and contribute to the response. I will show you the next. My team collaboration is the first is the Bureau of Epidemiology under the Department of Disease Control, undertook epidemiological investigation, tracing, and identifying new case linked to the same adulterated herbal liquor source in the area around hospital, around the Nopalat Hospital. And the next team is the Royal Thai Police. They mapped the impact location and investigate where the liquor come from. Vendor selling suspected methanol scented goods have been ordered to close. They also prosecuted those involved in the manufacture and distribution of the adulterated liquor, as well as securing and collecting the product for further investigation. Next team is the district office authorized. They are authorized by law actively raise awareness about the dangers of adulterated herbal liquor and advise promote people with a history of drinking herbal liquor or advice for a symptom to seek medical treatment. The office also conducted inspection and enforce regulation at the store and prevent selling this split. Additional team inform resident from dangerous methanol poisoning. The Department of Health and Public Health Service Center carry out public awareness action in the impact area. The Ramatipadi Poison Center play a critical role in this response by providing rapid laboratory tests for blood methanol and formic acid concentration that confirm methanol toxicity within 24 hours. The center also provides consultation to doctors who may not have experience in managing methanol poison case. Additionally, the associated Professor Sathiya Takul Srichai at the center contributed to revise the treatment protocol. The excise department collaborates with police to assess liquor sample for toxic ethanol concentration, and they provide ethanol for medical use in my hospital. Finally, network hospital under the department medical service contribute a surge capacity by coordinating patient transfer when Nopalat Hospital resort was exposed. Regarding the conclusion, this incident, the outbreak was successful, contained, and controlled. With no new case report within 7 days. After the EOC attributment, the EOC was officially closed on the 2nd September 2024, marking the resolution of the crisis. And the success in the incident response, this slide shows the patient with no new case in 7 days. The first success incident response, success of the methanol incident response include rapid containment of outbreak within 2 days of EOC attributment. The number of affected patients began to decrease. This achievement was largely due to the effective collaboration between EOC and external authority who play a key role throughout the entire response. The challenge in the incident response, the exact number of affected minor remain unclear. I think maybe another patient come to my hospital, possibly due to under reporting as no minor case were recorded, despite distributing informative poster in foreign language such as Burmese, Cambodia, and another foreign patient. This could be attributed to limited access information for this group. And other challenge include financial issue, as the patient were sent to hospital where they were were eligible for universal health coverage or social security life. But this hospital had varying capacity to manage methanol poisoning case. The management can rely on individual hospital, and we were unable to enforce standardized treatment and another hospital. And an opportunity for improvement to improve the response to this incident, develop being laboratory testing capacity such as serum osmolality or methanol level with turnaround time within a few hours would enable more timely adjustment to management plan. And additionally, ensure a reliable supply for mifepristone would be critical to effectively treat severe methanol toxicology. Mifepristone is not in Thailand. Secondly, we better reach the group of involved migrant worker. And this employer in the response team would be essential. In terms of financial, we could manage and transfer patient to the hospital with necessary capacity regardless of health coverage life. It would ensure equal care for all patients. Thank you.
The Poison Center identified a potential methanol poisoning incident, develop a case definition, and closely monitor the incident as well as the affected patients. We provided public messaging about the possible methanol poisoning incident. We also provided guidelines for diagnosis and management of methanol poisoning to frontline personnel in the affected area. We collaborate with the consulting clinical toxicologist in Nopalat Rajthani Hospital in the patient who treated in the private hospital. We directly take a consultation and follow up this patient. Other critical roles of Poison Center is its toxicological laboratory service. Initially, no rapid laboratory test for blood methanol concentration was available. With existing testing taking several days to report results, our Poison Center toxicological lab was critical in this unmet need by successfully providing rapid laboratory testing to confirm methanol toxicity within 24 hours. For the success in incident response, our Poison Center can quickly identify a potential methanol poisoning incident. Laboratory testing was provided to confirm diagnosis. Good communication between Department of Public Health and our Poison Center as the responder and the consultant. Challenges. Our Poison Center lacks authorities to control the treatment protocol in all hospitals. Some hospitals did not effectively follow treatment guidelines, potentially contributing to the high mortality rates. When we suspect a chemical or toxicological incident in the past, we inform the relevant agencies. However, our Poison Center did not regularly receive any progress or feedback report. Opportunities for improvement. The incident highlight the urgent need of intravenous ethanol and fomepizole as methanol antidote. Typically, we recommend oral ethanol for treating methanol poisoning due to its availabilities. However, some patients in this incident were in shock stage or had developed upper gastrointestinal bleeding, making oral ethanol unsuitable. At the same time, we did not have intravenous absolute ethanol ready, available for immediate distribution. So right now, we improve the intravenous ethanol stockpile and make it more easily to be accessed. For the fomepizole, a proposal has been made to the National Drug Selection Committee to include fomepizole in the National Drug List as well as Thai National Antidote Project. Timely, accurate, and up-to-date bidirectional communication and collaboration between public health agencies and poison center would enhance our response capability on all levels. For key takeaways, routine poison center works involve toxicovigilance function. In chemical incident, its main role including providing information related to the diagnosis and management of poisoning, offering consultation for frontline healthcare personnel, as well as the general public, and providing specific toxicological laboratory support. The Poison Center serves as a consultant to support public health agencies, which are the public force in managing chemical incidents. Effective collaboration between Poison Center and public health service enhances the country's response to such incidents. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Winai, Dr. Pairoj, and Dr. Bootsakorn for this very comprehensive presentation. So it's excellent and a very interesting case. So thank you very much. So I can see that Dr. Winai and Dr. Bootsakorn open their cameras. So they are available for receiving your questions. So there's already a couple of questions that have been submitted in the chat. Very interesting questions. So the first one would be, where did the herbal liquor originate from? So the question is from Meredith.
Yeah, from the investigation of the police, they think that the vendor may receive the methanol from the sellers instead of the ethanol. Dr. Bustamante, do you have more answer about this, in detail about this?
For the police, according from the police record, yeah, and it's traced back that to distributors who selling the homemade spirits, and they purchase the leavening agents from the chemical store to produce he wants to produce a 35 degree of the ethanol by diluting the 95 degree ethanol. And that they told the police that they don't know that the chemical, the leavening agents that they bought from the chemical store, it was contained of the methanol. Yeah. So, and that's the source of the herbal liquor. Yes.
So it could have been a malicious act, you know. So it wasn't a case, but you know, it could have been something on purpose, poisoning people on purpose. So what is the mechanism that currently exists? Because I could see that at one point the Royal Thai Police was engaged, was involved. So is it the poison center that is going to contact them, or it's more at the level of the health ministry through the EOC? So I was just looking for the mechanism for making sure that there's that public safety can be engaged and involved as soon as possible.
In general, if the poison center, we got a cases and we think that this is not usual, it's potential to be the mass poisoning or any kind of outbreak, we will collaborate with the relevant agencies and depend on what kind of the case. But in this incident, it is the Ministry of the Public Health at Naparalachthani will have an EOC, so they contact the hospital, to the police.
Okay, perfect. So it's really through the EOC. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. So we have another question here. Did patient 2 recover completely, or was there permanent damage regarding vision? Do you have methanol concentrations for other time points?
Yeah, for the second case, the patient number 2, who has a 69-year-old male, yeah, he can survive and discharge from the hospital after stay on the hospital for about 20 days because of as long as a hospital stay, because he developed the complication between in the hospital stay. And we also repeat the methanol level after hemodialysis was done and it's turned down to 0. Yeah. But the first methanol level is about 25 milligram per deciliters on the first day he visited the hospital. And for about the complication from the methanol intoxication, unfortunately, let me say that most of the case that went to the Noparat Ratchathani hospital, all of the case involved with the methanol this outbreak, we made an appointment for all of the patients to follow up, to come back to the hospital for the follow up with the neurological and also the ophthalmological sequelae. But only some of the patients came back to the hospital. Like in the second case, the case number 2, he didn't visit after we make an appointment for him. So but from the report of the neurologist and the ophthalmologist at the day that he discharged from the hospital, he didn't develop the neurological abnormalities and the ophthalmological abnormalities too. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, for the case that admit in the private hospital, that the Poison Center follow up this patient, is the same that we cannot get the information of the patient after they discharge from the hospital.
Very interesting. So another question. So what measures have been taken to prevent another outbreak?
I think it might be the responsibilities of the vendor. Okay, I think so.
Yeah.
Bootsakorn, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's quite hard to make the public concern to raise awareness on the tight control in producing manufacturing of these unlicensed liquor. Yeah.
We have also another question about, okay, so what is the long-term care for patients that survive the methanol poisoning? Can the bird reduce vision, be reversed in some of the patients?
I think in Thailand we have the 3 scheme of the treatment. I think the healthcare service universal coverage, and the second one is the workers. I think that it depends on what kind of the healthcare scheme that the patient have. So after that, they will send to the facilities that under that kind of scheme of the patient.
So have there been reports of metal intoxication due to inhalation? So for example, in occupational exposure?
Yes, we did, but very rare for inhalation of methanol and causing methanol poisoning. In our country, methanol poisoning is common for the liquor. I think the liquor. One reason is that some people did not realize the difference between the methanol and ethanol, and so they use methanol instead of the ethanol for make a liquor. But the other one is something like adulterate, like this incident.
Yeah, I can imagine that this is a very challenging issue. We have another question here. Was the self-assessment survey for members of the public who consume herbal liquor to help decide on their risk and if further investigation was needed?
In this methanol outbreak, we developed the self-assessment survey that contained about the group of questions that contain the information about the initial symptoms that alert the local people to aware of that. If they had all of these clinical signs and symptoms, they will need to come to the hospital for like a prompt treatment and investigation, something like that. So mostly of all of the question in the questionnaire is all about the clinical signs and symptoms that people can do at home.
Again, thank you very much for this comprehensive presentation. Very appreciated. So thank you, Dr. Winai and Dr. Bootsakorn. And we are going to move with the next presentation. The second case study presentation is titled Shedding Light on DMP Poisoning in the UK, progress and challenges encountered, and it will be presented by Professor Raquel Duarte-Davidson, the head of Chemicals and Environmental Effects Department and Commissioner of the UK National Poisons Information Service. Dr. Ruben, also Dr. Ruben Thanacoody, the Director of the Newcastle Unit of the UK National Poisons Information Service.
Thank you for the invitation to talk at this very interesting Global Health Symposium. I am Dr. Thanacoody. I'm the Director of the Newcastle Unit of the UK National Poisons Information Service. I will provide an overview of the toxicity and poison center experience with 2,4-dinitrophenol in the UK. I have no conflicts of interest to declare, but much of the work I will be presenting was done by my predecessor, Professor Simon Thomas. Professor Duarte-Davidson from the UK Health Security Agency will then cover the public health response. Just as a matter of introduction, the UK National Poisons Information Service is a network of 4 poison centres based in Edinburgh, Newcastle, Birmingham and Cardiff, and we provide a telephone advice 24/7 to healthcare professionals on a national rota. The first port of call for enquiries in the UK is Toxbase, which is an online poisons information database. Telephone enquiries are answered by a single national number and answered by specialists in poisons information, with the more complex enquiries being referred to NPIS clinical consultants who provide 24/7 cover on a national consultant rota. 2,4-dinitrophenol, or DNP for short, is an interesting chemical. The French used DNP in the manufacture of munitions during the First World War. Since then, it has also been used as a dye, wood preservative, herbicide, and photographic developer. It is widely available and marketed on the internet under various brand names as a safe weight loss drug, and is targeted towards bodybuilders who are attempting to lose fat but retain muscle bulk. Individuals are often able to purchase large quantities, often kilograms of DNP powder, or hundreds or thousands of DNP containing tablets on the internet. In the UK, DNP was considered a food supplement, and the regulator was the Food Standards Agency. DNP appears as solid yellow crystals or powder. It is slightly soluble in water and soluble in ether and solutions of sodium or potassium hydroxide. It is an unstable compound and may explosively decompose on shock, friction, or concussion. It is only explosive when dry or when containing less than 15% water. It has a sweet, musty odor and bitter taste, but it can also penetrate gloves. Maurice Tainter at Stanford University discovered in 1933 that the human consumption of DNP led to significant weight loss, which led to its popularity as a weight loss drug. It was included in over-the-counter medications and was sold to the public without requiring a prescription early in the 1930s as a highly recommended treatment for obesity. During the first 15 months following the introduction of its use, an estimated 100,000 people took the drug for weight reduction. As time went by and more side effects, especially cataracts, were reported, DNP was labeled as extremely dangerous and not fit for human consumption by the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act of 1938. In 1948, its mechanism of action was discovered, revealing that DNP is a protonophore, able to move protons through lipid bilayers, and thus chemically uncouple substrate oxidation from ATP production. It also stimulates cellular metabolism of pyruvate to NADH, generating further energy excess within the mitochondria that is released as heat. And it also blocks the lipogenic effects of insulin. ATP production is the final product of the Krebs cycle in mitochondria. During glycolysis, there is a net production of 2 ATP molecules, but the majority of energy-rich phosphate bonds are produced during the final oxidative phosphorylation process. During this final phase, ATP synthetase converts ADP to ATP with the addition of an inorganic phosphate molecule. DNP prevents the uptake of inorganic phosphate molecules into the mitochondria, resulting in the inhibition of all energy-requiring processes and the extramitochondrial accumulation of inorganic phosphate. DNP also acts as a chemical ionophore, exporting the proton ions needed for ATP production across the mitochondrial membrane by increasing the basal leak of protons. This shift in the proton electrochemical gradient results in energy dissipating as heat instead of being converted to ATP with rapid consumption of calories. The heat production represents a failure in thermoregulatory homeostasis, leading to uncontrolled hyperthermia. In summary, the consequences of DNP exposure are increased metabolic rate, glycolysis, and lipolysis, leading to reduced fat stores. There is a risk of uncontrolled thermogenesis, leading to hyperpyrexia and multi-organ failure, particularly with higher doses. The most common side effect reported with the therapeutic use of DNP is a rash, which can be maculopapular, urticarial, angioedema, or a severe exfoliative dermatitis. This is often accompanied by pruritus and subsequent desquamation. Prolonged peripheral neuropathy, often affecting the hands and feet, and associated with skin changes, and permanent deafness has been reported. Cataracts can develop quickly after the use of DNP, usually leading to a permanent decrease in vision to light-dark perception in days to months. T-wave and ST segment abnormalities, acute kidney injury, agranulocytosis, and neutropenia have been associated with the therapeutic use of DNP. Following acute overdose, the average time to presentation in the reported cases is 7 to 8 hours, and the average time of death is 14 hours. Onset of symptoms occurs as early as 3 hours after the overdose. The usual initial complaint is profuse sweating, followed by tachycardia, tachypnea, shock, confusion, convulsions, cardiovascular collapse, and pulseless electrical activity. Preceding death, the patient is often profoundly hyperthermic, and there may be associated methemoglobinemia. Death is usually secondary to cardiovascular collapse. In a study performed by Professor Thomas, the predictors of fatality were the acute ingestion and dose of DNP ingested, the presence of hyperpyrexia, confusion, acidosis, or tachycardia. No specific antidote for DNP poisoning is available. All management strategies are based on case reports and expert opinion. External decontamination, if appropriate, should be undertaken by washing to reduce thermal exposure. Seizures should be controlled with benzodiazepines. These may also be needed to control severely agitated patients, as their agitation will add to the hyperthermic state, which may lead to circulatory collapse. If benzodiazepines do not control agitation or seizures, then paralysis, intubation, and ventilation should be considered. Dantrolene and ice bath have been used to control the severe hyperthermic state, and external cooling devices can also be used. Intravenous vasopressors and/or inotropes should be considered if hypotension is not responsive to fluid therapy. The methemoglobin concentration should be checked following DNP exposure, and intravenous methylene blue can be used to treat methemoglobinemia. The typical treatment regimen for weight control that was used in the 1930s consisted of one capsule containing 75 mg of 2,4-dinitrophenol or 100 mg of the sodium salt taken 3 times daily after meals. In this stone age, people who buy DNP over the internet often use 100 to 250 mg tablets, and their regular dose typically lies between 100 to 400 mg per day, and they often use it together with other drugs such as anabolic steroids and thyroxine to lose weight. DNP has a low therapeutic index and significant variation in individual response. The doses reported in the published literature about acute and suicidal fatalities range between 2.8 gram to an estimated 5 gram. A study of 62 published deaths was described in a review by Grunling. This review describes a study of 36 deaths due to occupational exposure to DNP in munition factories in Paris in 1919. That paper also described improvements made in the factory to prevent further deaths through simple measures such as ventilation, personal protective equipment, and better hygiene, combined with changes in legislation that brought the death rate down from 16.3 per 10,000 tons of DNP handled to 1.2 per 10,000 tons. In the 1930s, DNP was mainly used for weight loss, and there were a few associated deaths reported in the literature. After 1938, the medical prescription for DNP for weight loss stopped, and cases of poisoning due to medical intake were no longer reported. During the Second World War, it is anecdotally reported to have been prescribed to Russian soldiers to keep them warm, and as a result, a few deaths were reported. Case reports of death associated with the ingestion of DNP re-emerged in the early 2000s. The UK Food Standard Agency issued a warning in 2003, labeling DNP as not fit for human consumption. This warning was aimed specifically at bodybuilders to avoid its use due to significant potential for short-term and long-term harm, following the hospitalization of a Finnish bodybuilder after having taken DNP. The UK National Poisons Information Service noted an increase in telephone enquiries, mirrored by an increase in Talkspace accesses in 2012 and 2013. Follow-up of these enquiries revealed 5 fatalities, 4 were from acute overdose and 1 from a subacute overdose. This led to public health messages being issued by Public Health England and the Food Standards Agency to warn potential users and health professionals about the toxic effects of DNP. Professor Thomas subsequently looked at poison center enquiries in the United States and the United Kingdom and found that there was a steady rise in DNP cases reported to poison centers in the United States. In the UK, there was an initial fall in 2014 following the public health messaging, but there was a further spike in 2015, which led to further public health action. This issue was also noted elsewhere. This graph shows a spike in DNP cases reported to the New South Wales Poison Information Centre in Australia in 2016 onwards. Professor Thomas conducted a survey of poison centres in collaboration with WHO to identify the numbers of enquiries involving suspected systemic exposure to DNP over a 10-year period from January 2010 to September 2020. Data were obtained from at least one poison centre from 37 countries, with complete national data in 31 countries and incomplete national data in another 6. Details were obtained on 434 cases, and there was a male preponderance. Poison centers in 5 countries were unable to provide mortality data. The remainder reported 50 deaths from 422 DNP cases, giving a case fatality of 11.9%. The case fatality in males appeared to be slightly higher compared to females. This graph shows the trend in case numbers of DNP exposures reported to poison centers in the survey, with peaks in DNP exposures reported between 2015 and 2018, with a decline following 2018. There is also considerable variation between countries, with the highest case rates per million population over the 10-year study period found in Sweden, Norway, UK, and Australia. However, there are many limitations to consider when interpreting these poison center data. Not all cases of exposure are discussed with the poison center, including some fatalities. Therefore, enquiry numbers do not correlate directly with the numbers who develop toxicity. Although data were requested on numbers of individual cases, it is possible that the same case might have been counted as separate cases. Some poison centers only take enquiries from health professionals, while most also serve the general public. This may contribute to international difference. Exposure data rely on patient history, as analytical confirmation is rarely available. Many poison centers did not respond to the survey or were unable to provide all the data requested. Follow-up of cases by poison centers is incomplete, and the outcome may not be known, so fatalities are likely to be underestimated. I will now hand over to Professor Duarte-Davidson from the UK Health Security Agency, who will talk about the public health actions taken in the UK in response to these poison center findings.
Thank you, Ruben. The next part of the presentation will focus on the public health response, including issuing alerts and notifications and communicating key messages to the public and other stakeholders. It is important to ensure that messages are targeted to the right audience, to ensure that the health professionals providing the clinical management advice are aware of how toxic DNP is and also that vulnerable people are discouraged from purchasing DNP to lose weight or for bodybuilding. As Ruben has mentioned, the UK National Poisons Information Service first reported an increase in inquiry numbers and deaths relating to DNP in 2013. And they have since been monitoring the number of cases over time, as this slide shows. This has involved collating information on the number of times that Talkspace has been accessed to obtain information on DNP, which is shown on the left-hand side of the slide, and also the number of cases discussed by the 24/7 NPI's telephone service. And the number of cases are shown on the graph on the right-hand side, and also the dotted lines in the actual figures. Various actions have been taken over time to manage and respond to the increase in poisoning cases, including issuing alerts and notifying healthcare professionals as to the dangers of DNP, and providing information on actions that should be taken if they come across a person that has ingested DNP. This has also included campaigning to change the legislation to reclassify DNP as a poison. I will provide a bit more detailed information on this later. The blue vertical lines in this slide highlight the various points in time when these warnings and notifications were issued. I will also provide a few examples of these warnings in the next few slides. So, following a significant increase in inquiries and cases in 2015, a decision was made to send targeted information to healthcare professionals to make doctors aware of this issue, and also to provide emergency departments with practical information on what to do should they come across a case involving NPI's poisoning. This practical information was important as cases across the country are rare, so it's very likely that doctors may not have encountered a similar case previously. So a letter was sent by our Chief Medical Officer and distributed widely amongst relevant healthcare professionals. This letter also provided the links for Talkspace and links to the 24/7 NPS hotline, reminding doctors and other health professionals of the importance of contacting the poison centre, as DNP is a very toxic chemical and it's really key that advice is sought should they come across a poisoned individual. The Food Standards Agency, FSA, is the regulator and therefore took leadership in alerting, notifying and communicating these risks, as well as investigating and prosecuting suppliers who illegally sold this product as a food supplement. UKHSA and the NPIs worked closely with the FSA to ensure information sharing and to ensure that we had a coordinated and clear understanding of the issue. The FSA and equivalent agencies in other UK nations, such as Scotland, had a number of campaigns to raise awareness and provide information on how to prevent DNP deaths, and these are two examples of such campaigns. The one on the left in green relates to advice given to England, whilst the one on the right relates to advice provided to Scotland. DNP poisoning is a global issue affecting a number of countries. Because of this, Interpol has issued global alerts for this potentially lethal diet drug, and an example of such alerts is shown in this slide. The next slide highlights the fact that the European Union Food Fraud Network published a report in 2019. This report provided evidence on tackling the sale of DNP for human consumption. This was a joint venture involving Europol and Interpol, and it was a joint operation targeting fake and substandard food and beverages. 10 EU member states participated in this project with the aim of exploring the sale and availability of DMP. The program led to 23 seizures across Europe during the reporting period. These seizures were achieved through intelligence-led enforcement interventions at private homes, testing purchased products, and through the detection of parcels by customer authorities. The program also led to over 50,000 capsules of DNP being prevented from entering the market, and online activities also led to the removal of over 75 online sales sites on the web. The program was also complemented by proactive awareness raising and communications targeted at consumers, for example, through the provision of safety advice on websites. Whilst campaigning was going on to change the legislation to reclassify DMP as a poison, we continued to communicate the risks, for example, by posting information on blogs, such as the one shown here. Also, where there was evidence on illegal selling of DMP, individuals were prosecuted and sentenced, as was the case with the example shown on the left of this slide. In response to a number of deaths from DMP in the UK, legislation was introduced to reclassify DMP as a poison under the Poisons Act 1972. And this legislation took place as from the 1st of October 2023. Until the change in the legislation, the National Food Crime Unit was charged with investigating DMP as a threat to food safety when sold as a diet pill. However, the responsibility for investigating and prosecuting DMP sales now falls under the police's responsibility. So anybody selling DMP is committing a crime, and as such will be prosecuted under the Poisons Act. The aim of the change in the legislation was to make it more difficult for members of the public to acquire DMP, and also making it easier to prosecute and give longer sentences to discourage the illegal sale of these products. Reclassification of a poison, of course, doesn't mean that DNP will be removed from the market completely, as it may still be sold illegally. It is therefore important to continue to monitor cases and to see whether the changes in legislation leads to a reduction in poisoning cases being reported. This slide shows cases reported to the NPS pre and post reclassification for 12 months prior and 12 months after the change in the legislation. It is probably too early really to analyse the full impacts of the changes, but from the information available so far, there has been a reduction in calls to the service requiring information on DMP. So these calls have dropped from 8 calls in 2022-23 down to 2 calls in 2023-24. It'll be important to continue to monitor these to see whether these calls remain low and whether there's a reduction in poisoning cases across. So now I will provide a summary of the successes, challenges and lessons learned from DMP poisoning in the UK. So the next slide shows the successes. Ongoing toxicovigilance by poison centres identified an important public health issue. We've also seen that strong collaboration between public health, the regulator and poison centres ensured clear understanding of the issue and helped provide timely advice to stakeholders and affected parties, such as families and relatives. Multi-agency working allowed for clear strategy and public health actions needed to deal with this very complex issue. The clinical management advice was also reviewed to ensure that information provided to healthcare professionals was up to date, based on new cases and evidence collected during these years. So some of the challenges and lessons learned included the difficulties of dealing with families, relatives of affected patients, the fact that change in legislation is a complex and lengthy process that requires very strong evidence and a lot of data. The NPS has a poisons database, which is used to collect information on poisonings and exposures. Having an automated toxicovigilance system would make it much easier to do search and detection and alerting for signals for other toxic products. And we're currently updating our database to enable automated searching to take place in the future. Proactive follow-up of severe and unusual poisoning cases at an early stage may help improve patients' outcomes. And also, DNP has highlighted the importance of cross-agency collaboration to ensure the provision of public health information to reduce exposures to poisons. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Professor Simon Thomas's leadership in this topic area whilst he was a director of the NPI's Newcastle unit until he retired. I would also like to thank all NPI's directors and many staff in GHSI for their support over a very long period of time. Thank you for listening, and both Ruben and I would be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Professor Duarte-Davidson and Dr. Thanacoody. So thank you very much for this excellent presentation. It's a very interesting case. So we already have 7 questions or 8 questions in the chat. So we'll go with the most popular one, which is, can dependence develop in people who use DNP chronically?
I don't think the issue is really around dependence. It's very different compared to, for example, drugs like GHB, where people become severely dependent. I think the dependence is not physical or psychological dependence, but because it is so successful as a weight loss drug, people tend to use it more because it is successful. But it's not a drug that is addictive in the sense that people become physically or psychologically dependent on.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have another question here. Did the FSA use social media, for instance, Facebook, Instagram, to communicate with the public and users? They said that websites are not as effective at reaching the general public. So
yes, they did use other social media. So, for example, FSA has some information on Facebook, on DNP. I'm not sure about Instagram, but they're definitely on Facebook. I think the key thing with DNP is reaching the right balance between providing enough information to stop people wanting to take DNP to lose weight and for bodybuilding, because also many of the people that use DNP are vulnerable people. They're very vulnerable young people, or that for example want to lose weight and would do more than most to achieve that. So any information that has been placed on any social media, blogs, etc., we've had to be very careful to ensure that it doesn't encourage or promote the use of DNP. So obviously we wouldn't put anything purposely to promote it, but it's the sort of thing that could be interpreted differently. So we do have used social media led by FSA as the regulator, but being very careful about the messages that we put on that social media.
No, absolutely. Find the right balance, right? So you don't really want to start communicating and marketing this substance as something that could be generating some appetite for the people. So it's quite a challenge. Yeah. So very interesting aspect. That definitely we will have to discuss also a bit more next week during the town hall session for sure. My communication aspect. There's another question here. Is there a risk of contamination of DNP preparations, and which substances are used for adulteration?
Well, I'm not aware of DNP being adulterated, and if it is, it's probably not the most important aspect of the poisoning, because DNP is itself so toxic that we tend to worry more about the DNP intoxication than what it is adulterated with. I don't think we've got a lot of information, but certainly from kind of coroner's reports that I've come across with forensic toxicology, it doesn't appear that the DNP is adulterated. I think the DNP is pure DNP, and it is incredibly toxic, even in small doses.
Perfect. We have another question here. Can a restriction be placed on DNP in controlling sales, like that done for paracetamol in your jurisdiction?
So I think the key thing is that DNP is it's illegal to sell DNP as any for consumption. So I think Ruben highlighted some of the uses of DNP, as an industrial chemical, but definitely it's illegal to sell DNP for consumption as in supplements, etc. So that is already there. People are, we are not allowed to sell DNP for food consumption. The problem is, or has been historically, that it will be sold in the dark web. So people that really want to get hold of DNP will search on the internet, and there'll always be websites selling it illegally. And also, once they're sold illegally, they're just pills. They're put in the post, and then they'll be posted to the person's address. So it's quite difficult to stop or to find, these sites. And for example, up to the change in the legislation, FSA was charged with looking at the web and taken down any sites that came up trying to sell the pills illegally. Of course, if they did find people selling it, for example, in the UK, and there was evidence, then they would be prosecuted. And I did give an example of such case where basically somebody purchased it from abroad, sold them, and they had a home-based business, so to speak, selling them illegally. So those are the sort of things that need to be stopped, and that's a key difficulty because it's in the underworld, so to speak, in the way that they sell it.
So I noticed during the presentation that on the graph that was presenting the occurrence of cases, after the 50s, there was a pretty long period of time before we reached the 2000 that there was no occurrence. So how could we explain this? And do we believe that the internet and the dark web could also explain partially the reoccurrence of DNP?
I suspect that the emergence of the web in the late 1990s is probably what led to the efficient marketing of DNP as a weight loss drug. So people could buy it over the internet and get it delivered to their home, and in the UK as a food supplement, and it wasn't illegal. So that was done until the FSA issued a warning in 2003. But in response to the other question about banning, the reason we as a poison center remain vigilant is obviously banning the substance and making it illegal to sell doesn't mean that it goes away. I think there is a risk that now people don't sell it as DNP, but sell the DNP under a different name. And I think we're becoming a bit more vigilant towards, we reported the one case in the pre-classification about a person who died having taken a caffeine supplement. So he thought he'd been taking caffeine, but post-mortem actually confirmed DNP. So there is that possibility of it re-emerging, but being sold as a completely different entity and not being sold as DNP per se.
Very interesting to see also the impact of communication now on the number of poisoning cases and the reintroduction of substances and the access to them too. So definitely elements that we will need to be discussed during the town hall next week on the 20th. We have another question here. Are there experimental therapeutic strategies going on focusing on reducing mitochondrial activity in DNP poisoning?
I don't think there's been a lot of research done in terms of therapeutic treatments for DNP. I think much of the research on DNP has been to use it as DNP as a research tool, as a tool to actually induce mitochondrial toxicity to then test various chemicals. So I think it is well known to be very toxic to mitochondria. So if it is used for research purposes. I am not aware. It's something we looked into quite a lot when there was obviously quite a bit of a campaign by the relatives of patients who died from DNP in the UK, who were really kind of challenging as to whether we were providing the best possible treatment for these patients. So we've been looking in the literature quite a lot in terms of what can be done to reduce DNP toxicity. And the answer is there isn't a lot of evidence of managing DNP toxicity in humans.
Perfect. We have a question from Richard. So that first of all, he's saying fantastic presentation. So I totally agree with him. Could you speak further to how the National Food Crime Unit worked with international partners to have illegal websites hosted internationally taken down? Could this be expanded to address other risks, such as non-authorized online pharmacy?
The main focus from the National Food Crime Unit was a national effort. So basically, it was looking at websites targeting the UK web pages. It's quite a difficult and laborious process because as soon as you get a website down, they go and find another location for it. So they did spend significant resources trying to do that. And I think it's like with anything else, it's a process they follow. And I don't think I could go into any more detail on that. But I think that as the Interpol example I presented earlier shows, there is international collaboration and it's key because obviously it's an issue. There is, the dark web and selling illegal products on the web is something that's happens across the world. So I think it's an IT issue and it's for these, crime units, they specialize on the web, etc., for them to look at it. But for sure, there is international collaboration because I think we're all aiming for getting them off the web if possible.
It's a very tough question. And again, something that definitely has to be discussed next week.
And the assumption is that they would do that for other or unauthorized online pharmacies, but that may fall under a different, it may be the food crime unit, but maybe other units as well that are looking at issues like that.
So we have time for a last question. Among the most popular, so is the use of benzodiazepines parts of the standard protocol for management of DNP poisoning?
It is what we recommend on Talkspace for the management of seizures and severe agitation with DNP, and potentially it may have some effect also with the hyperpyrexia that we see. So it is the first kind of treatment line that we recommend for managing DNP toxicity. And that's one of the first things that we had to do when these cases emerged, because it was so rare and they were being managed in emergency departments by often quite junior residents in the middle of the night who weren't particularly aware of the potential and rapid toxicity of DNP. So we amended the Talkspace entry to make sure that it was flagged as a highly toxic drug and recommended that all the cases be discussed with the poison center.
Thank you very much. There's a pretty long list of other questions, but we're going to keep them. So just for the audience, just to let them know, all the questions are going to be noted. You can still continue to ask your questions. We're going to take all of them and make sure that they are going to be covered in our town hall next week. So we're going to take a short break, so 10 minutes. And after that, we'll reconvene with the third presentation. Thank you very much, everyone. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. It's time for us to continue with our third case study presentation from Chile on the medicine multi-pack major chemical incident. This will be presented by Dr. Juan Carlos Rios Bustamante, a toxicologist and executive director of the Poison Center at the Faculty of Medicine. Also, Mr. Guido Martinez Reyes, a health professional for the Ministry of Health of Chile.
This presentation reflects the opinion of the Poison Center and is intended for informational purpose only. My name is Juan Carlos Rios, and I have the privilege of service as the Executive Director of the Poison Center at the Faculty of Medicine, Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile. Alongside this role, I am also a professor in the Department of Clinical Laboratory and part of the Pharmacology and Toxicology program at our School of Medicine. I would like to sincerely thank the Global Health Security Initiative for the invitation to this important symposium, enhancing public health management of chemical incident through collaboration with Poison Center. Today, I will share an overview of our center, focusing on its key role in managing toxicological data and our collaborative effort to strengthen public health responses to chemical emergency. The Poison Information Center of the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, CITUC, for its acronym in Spanish, was established in 1992, inspired by the operational model of Poison Center in the United States. Located within the Faculty of Medicine at the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile, CITUC provides vital nationwide services. We are committed to public safety and health, offering free telephone support 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, to assist the general public in managing and preventing poisoning incidents effectively. Our center plays a crucial role in both emergency response and toxicological education, serving as a critical resource for individual and healthcare professionals across the country. CITUC employs approximately 20 professionals from diverse backgrounds, ensuring comprehensive support around the clock. Our team includes 6 pharmacists, 5 nurses, 2 toxicologists, 1 physician, 3 chemical engineers, an environmental chemist, an epidemiologist, and an executive assistant. Together, they deliver expert assistance and guidance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, addressing the varied and urgent needs of those we serve. Key characteristics of our center: non-profit organization. We offer guidance and prevention, community protection. In the event of chemical accident, our center plays a fundamental role by providing accurate and actionable data. This critical support helps safeguard the community by informing and guiding emergency response teams, including firefighter, police, and health authority, enhancing their ability to respond swiftly and effectively. And pharmacovigilance. Diverse operational center. Our center is structured in 3 specialized operational centers. Poison Center, focused on providing immediately assistance and expert guidance for poisoning case. Chemical Emergency Center, established as a part of the Poison Center following WHO recommendations to handle chemical emergency efficiently, reducing the high cost typically associated with operating standalone chemical emergency center. And Pharmacovigilance Center, dedicated to monitoring, receiving, and notifying adverse drug reaction. Service Provision Unit. Alongside the centers, our structure included 3 distinct service provision units. Risk Assessment Unit, dedicated to the assessment of risks associated with chemical substance. Chemical Regulatory Affairs Management Unit focuses on the management of chemical substances by regulatory affairs. Continuing Education and the Training Unit offers specialized training and professional development to enhance expertise in our field. Contact support. Each center operates with distinct phone numbers to streamline support and ensure precise assistance is delivered efficiently. Our center collectively manages more or less 55,000 inquiries annually regarding intoxicated patients and around 5 chemical emergency. National reference role. Since 2009, SITUC has been recognized as the National Reference Center for Chemical Emergency and Poisoning by the Ministry of Health of the Chilean government, reflecting our critical role in public health management. Let's take a look at the case. On December 17, 1995, a significant fire erupted at the Matisse Company's facility in Santiago of Chile, where hazardous substances, including agrochemicals, solvents, and various unidentified chemicals, were manufactured and stored. The fire generated a large smoke column visible throughout Santiago, with visibility extending over 20 kilometers. It burned with high intensity for more or less 10 hours during daylight. Emergency response. As the incident unfolded, SITUC was contacted by firefighters and healthcare personnel seeking guidance on managing the blaze and the treating potential exposed patients, respectively. Given the complexity of the situation and SITUC's limited experience with such large-scale chemical incidents, we reached out to CHEMTRE, an emergency response call center in the United States for specialized support. Challenge encountered. The management of the incident was particularly challenging due to the lack of detailed information about the chemical involved. The facility had insufficient record of the substance stored, especially lacking detailed safety data sheets. This gap in information severely limited the advice we could provide. Consequently, based on the nature of the fire and the chemical potentially involved, CHEMTRE recommended that firefighters focus solely on containing the fire rather than attempting to extinguish it, to prevent further chemical reaction and potential explosion. Health impact. From the health perspective, the fire resulted in one fatality and multiple injuries, including several cases of chemical burns, skin and heat irritation, and mostly mild respiratory issues among the firefighters. Key achievements. Prompt recognition of limitations. SITUC's main success during the incident was the swift recognition of our own limitations regarding the expertise required to manage the situation effectively. Understanding our constraints allowed us to quickly seek assistance from CHEMTRE, a recognized institution with the necessary expertise. This decision facilitated a swift and informed response, crucially minimizing potential harm to emergency responders and the public. Challenge overcome. Lack of specific training. At the time of the incident, our team did not have specialized training in the management chemical fires, which poses a significant challenge given the complexity of the emergency and familiarity with chemical. we were not familiar with the chemical substance involved in the fire. This lack of specific chemical knowledge initially hindered our ability to advise on the incident effectively. Insufficient chemical data. We lacked detailed information about the characteristics of the chemical substances stored and the facility, which was critical for assessing the potential risk and appropriate response measure. Importance of the institutional support. The incident underscored the importance of having robust support systems and partnerships in place. Access to external expertise via Chemtech was instrumental in guiding our response force, emphasizing the need for continuous improvement in our training and information system to enhance our readiness for similar emergency in the future. As a direct outcome, in the 1995 fire at the Matisen Company facility, we recognized the urgent need for a dedicated chemical emergency center in Chile. This center would be responsible for maintaining a comprehensive database of various chemical substances to enhance our preparedness and responsive capability for chemical emergency. In response to this need, in 2000, a chemical emergency center was established with the support of the chemical industry. This initiative was based on an American model and incorporated key recommendations from international guidelines outlined in the book Guidelines for Poison Control. The establishment of this center significantly strengthened our national infrastructure for managing chemical incidents by providing critical information and resources needed to handle such emergency effectively. After visiting the Children's Hospital Poison Control Center in Alabama, we gained valuable insight to improving our own operation. Inspired by several manuals for Poison Control Center that we encountered there, we took the decisive step to enhance our capability. Firstly, we created a comprehensive database of safety data sheets to deepen our understanding of various chemical substances. Recognizing the importance of accessible emergency information, we initiated a campaign requiring all companies to include our Poison Control Center's phone number on their product. This measure aimed to streamline emergency response by making critical information readily available. Furthermore, we prepared a dedicated team of professionals equipped and handled chemical incidents, utilizing the Emergency Response Guidebook as a crucial reference document. Today, the phone number for our Chemical Emergency Center is prominently listed in the Emergency Response Guide, a vital resource used by most rapid response teams when dealing with chemical incident. This inclusion underscores our center's role as a key component of the National Emergency Response Framework, ensuring that our expertise and resources are an integral part of handling chemical emergency efficient and safely. Alliances were established with London Chemical Emergency Center, fostering a deeper understanding of chemical emergency management and the safe transportation of hazardous substances. This collaboration enhances our capacity to respond effectively to incidents, incorporating best practice and international expertise in our protocols. There are still areas for improvement, particularly in optimizing the quality of available information to ensure it is more accurate, comprehensive, and easily accessible for decision making during chemical incident. Additionally, implementing periodic training program for emergency personnel is essential to maintaining their preparedness and ensuring they stay up to date with the latest protocol for handling chemical emergency. Strengthening this aspect will enhance emergency response capability and help mitigate health risks more effectively. Finally, here is a picture of our dedicated team, the people whose hard work and commitment make all of this possible. Their expertise and dedication are the reason for our success. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Guido Martinez. I work in the Environmental Health Department of the Ministry of Health of Chile. Before starting, I would like to thank the Toxicological Information Center of the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile, CITUC, for the invitation. To make an additional comment on the interesting presentation made by Dr. Juan Carlos Rios, the director of the center that I mentioned before. And also, I want to thank the Global Health Security Initiative for the opportunity to share with you. As Dr. Rios mentioned in his previous presentation, the Methanol fire was one of the major chemical disasters in the country, which occurred in the 80s. This event marked a turning point in the management of chemical products at a national level. First of all, we would like to highlight that the Ministry of Health is the regulatory body for hazardous chemical substances in the national territory. Through the Health Code, it has the authority to regulate the life cycle of hazardous chemical substances. This is production, import, sale, possession, transportation, distribution, use, and dispose. After the Methanol incident that we saw in the previous presentation, there was a need to create and improve the regulation on hazardous chemical substances. And it was the first major chemical incident at the national level. At that time, there was no regulation and no preparation for an adequate response. In this sense, it's difficult to talk about success in the response and a learning process for the health sector was carried out after the event. However, it is possible to point out that the immediate measures were adopted for the health sector, such as recommending the evacuation of the population near to the event, epidemiological surveillance in health facility located in the commune on the incident was carried out, clinical care was provided that all the people needed, and environmental measures were also carried out. And chlorine gas was detected the day after the event, and the action were coordinated with the response agency such as firefighters and the municipality. One of the most important aspects that we can highlight is that a dialogue between the health authority of the region and the Association of Chemical Industry was initiated. Years later, this dialogue allowed the development of the current regulation on the safe storage of chemical substances that we will discuss below. This emergency contributes to the existence of the regulation on the safety of hazardous chemical substances, where it is possible to highlight Executive Order number 43 from 2015 of the Ministry of Health, which regulates the safe storage of hazardous chemical substances. This regulation, among other matters, established the system of declaration of hazardous substances. Premises under this regulation and which have the respective health authorization are required to declare twice a year the data of the facilities and the hazardous substances stored. This mandatory declaration is made by the premises through a digital platform from the health sector, coordinated with the Ministry of the Environment of Chile, which provide valuable information regarding the location and general characteristic of the facility that store hazardous substances in the country. In addition, there are other regulations, such as Executive Order number 57 from 2019 of the Ministry of Health, which is a regulation of the classification, labeling, and notification of hazardous chemical substances and mixture, which is related to the implementation of the globally harmonized system, GHS. Well, in terms of chemical incidents, we can highlight in 2009 a mutual cooperation agreement was signed between the Ministry of Health and the Toxicological Information Center of the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile in order to receive support for the response to chemical incidents. In 2016, the Ministry of Health implemented a platform to report and record online emergency events that require a response from public health perspective. This platform has registered more than 5,900 emergency events today, of which more than 800, around 14% of the total, are categorized as incidents involving hazardous chemical substances. Finally, the Ministry of Health is an active member of the National Committee for the Action Plan for Preparation and Response to Chemical Incidents, which is managed by the National Service for Preparation and Response to Emergency and Disaster, SENAPRET. Well, the Ministry of Health Chemical Safety Program addressed many other issues related to the chemical safety and the protection of human health, such as International Convention of Chemicals. However, in this minute, we want to focus our comment mainly on the chemical incident previously presented by Toxicological Center of the University of Catholic of Chile, and the change that this event produced at the national levels in terms of chemical safety. Well, thank you very much for your time and success in development of this interesting virtual symposium.
Thank you very much for this excellent presentation. So very interesting. So for the question and answer period, so Dr. Juan Carlos could not be available today, but we have the pleasure to have with us, in addition to Mr. Guido Martinez Reyes, Mr. Patricio Andres Medel Jara and Mr. Daniel Eduardo Rebolledo Fuentes. There are already a couple of questions in the chat, so we can look at the first one, which seems to be the most popular one. So at the time of the incident, was there any air quality monitoring or studies completed, especially that toxic by inhalation chemicals such as chlorine were involved in the fire?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. Well, I have to say, Dr. Juan Carlos Rio could not attend this session, like you say, Claude, because he's on vacation. So Patricio and I will try to respond to your question. About the first question, well, in that time, I'm not sure, but I think we don't count with some kind of monitoring station to determine some kind of chlorine were involved with the fire. I don't know, Guido, if you know if there is some station monitoring there.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for the question. I hope you hear me well. Yes, it's as we mentioned, it was in 1985. I mean, it was a long time ago. Obviously, the air quality network at that time was developing here, and in this term, we refer to detection of a chlorine gas in terms of a portable equipment. We thought that it was produced for substances in place, or maybe whether produced for another kind of reaction with another product in the event. Fortunately, it was a detection because we know that the toxic effect of chlorine gas. But fortunately, that product was detected in the place of the event, and obviously one day later of the event, and at that time no people was around the premises. For that reason, obviously the risk was controlled.
Perfect. So we have another question here. So do you currently have any training programs or yearly exercises that involve the emergency management teams?
Well, let me answer that, Guido. Well, if in the Poison Center view, we have a lot of webinar or something related with that to provide information to the stakeholder. All the kind of institution are involved in some kind of emergency related with chemical substance. So we provide that kind of informations. I don't know if there is from part of the Ministry of Health some schedule for that, but we count with some course and seminaries directly related with that kind of information.
Hello, everyone. In fact, we don't have a program of exercise, but some chemical industries have an interest or a major interest in this topic. So we coordinate some exercise maybe each 1 or 2 years. So we have at least 3 or 4 exercise here that is programmed and scheduled, so they can measure the answers that we provide. So in this scenario, we are studying the scenarios and make the quick response as we can.
Just to say, in terms of public health, we usually yearly realize that simulation exercise about different kind of hazard, and we try to include, for example, we made a simulation with a big earthquake, but at the same time we try to introduce in this kind of exercise like a chemical incident. And of course, that we connect previously with the Center of Toxicological that we are here. And obviously, we organize some previous scenario and some public health effect. And when we are in the exercise, obviously with officers contact to the chemical poison center and ask for some requirements about how deal with this kind of event that we are simulation for. Yeah, we used to have like a simulation, and we used to receive the support.
Did the company provide the list of chemicals eventually for the investigation?
Well, in that time, in 1995, actually that was the big issue of this situation, because the company, was a big store, so there is a lot of chemical substance inside, so nobody knows what is in there really. So that was the big issue. So that means that a change in the present, because right now all the chemical industry have to maintain this safety data sheet for all kind of stakeholder and people who manage this chemical substance daily. So that is a main issue.
Very good. So we have another question here about what is the role of your PCC, so I presume it's the Poison Control Center, in the aftermath of chemical incidents?
Yeah, well, I would to say the first role of the Poison Center are play a vital role in this aftermath of the chemical incident, offering expert guidance and support to mitigate any kind of adverse effects derived of some chemical exposure. So the first line of protection of the people, or the people in charge of against this fire or whatever situation of chemical substance, are this scientific support immediately, so can access to the information who they need. But obviously we need to know what kind of chemical are involved. So right now we can provide this information with the information necessary to know how to act.
Very interesting. And I would have a sub question regarding this. So in the Poison Center response, so do they have public messaging to deliver to the member of the public that would call the Poison Center because they are trying to figure out if they're at risk or what the situation is regarding the plume and the risks? So is there some public messaging that is also already prepared to be delivered to the population in case that they are calling?
Yeah, well, actually we have this guidance for chemical incidents. We developed that back in 2000s. So there is all kind of activities you need to do in case of some flame things or spilling things or whatever. So there is different scenarios. You can know how to act against each one of those. So that let us provide information to the speaker to how act in every case.
Perfect. No, excellent. We have another question here. What platforms do you use to communicate to the public? Websites, social media, etc.
Well, already we have very involved in those that in provide this kind of information. Many, not only related with chemical substance. We use this Instagram and Facebook and other social media, so we know that is a good line to spread the information for the community. So we right now in the past 2 years, I think we are note that is a good option for provide the information to the people. So we use it a lot.
We have another question here. Can you share some guidelines dealing with chemical incidents that could share? So SOPs for quick response, how to access simulation exercises.
Well, actually, we have some guidance. The red book, the yellow book. Yeah,
the orange guide. We used to is well known. We used the World Health Organization guideline and another technical guideline for develop of simulation exercise. Obviously, that we can share that the access of this kind of guide and the scripts of the event of the simulation script. Yeah, we can share, but I think they are in Spanish language. I hope maybe we can translate them, but we can share some script of this kind of exercise, of course.
No, perfect. Thank you. It's very generous. So thank you very much. And should satisfy Elena and our question, and we can follow up with the town hall that we'll have next week on February 20th. So thank you very much. It's all the time that we had. But thank you very much again for this excellent presentation, and I'm looking forward to continue this discussion next week on this topic. So our last two case studies will be delivered by the United States. We will start with an introduction from Dr. Alvin Bronstein, the president of America's Poison Centers. The first case study will be about an outbreak on a coagulopathy associated with vodifacum poisoning in Florida. So this case will be presented by Dr. Justin Arnold, the medical director of the Florida Poison Information Center in Tampa, and Dr. Prakash Mulay, a chemical surveillance epidemiologist for the Florida Department of Health.
Good morning. My name is Alvin Bronstein, and I'm the president of America's Poison Centers, the professional organization that represents all 54 U.S. poison centers. I'm very pleased to be here this morning. The first poison center in the United States was established in 1953 in Chicago, Illinois. In 1958, the American Association of Poison Control Centers, now called America's Poison Centers, was founded. At one point, over 800 hospitals and healthcare institutions identify themselves as poison centers and function without national criteria. National accreditation processes were established in 1988 and have undergone continuous refinement. There are currently 54 poison centers serving all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and 3 Pacific jurisdictions, American Samoa, the Federated States of Micronesia, and Guam. Most poison centers are funded by their respective states. Some poison centers are part of medical schools or hospitals, while others are freestanding. Some have specialized service contracts with entities such as manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, and government agencies. Poison centers began receiving federal government funding in the year 2000, which accounts for approximately 20% of poison centers' annual budget. Federal monies also support the national toll-free number, 1-800-222-1222. Besides direct poison center access, the toll-free number allows poison centers to back up other poison centers if there is an interruption of services. Although poison centers are structured and funded differently, have different capabilities and capacities, service hours and staffing are similar because of poison center accreditation criteria. All poison centers operate 24/7, 365, serving the public, healthcare providers, public health departments, and all use the national toll-free telephone access line. Poison center staffing comprises a medical and managing director. Specialists in poison information are SPIs, such as registered nurses, pharmacists, PharmDs, are specially trained in toxicology to answer the hotline. Some centers also use poison information providers, or PIPs. These are paraprofessionals paired with the SPI for lower acuity cases and information calls. Most poison centers have strong relationships with their local and state health departments. Many of the poison centers have medical toxicology training programs. Poison centers' caller data are entered into an electronic medical record system, and a subset is uploaded in near real time to the National Poison Data System, NPDS. NPDS, with its standardized data fields, serves as a centralized, web-based data collection system, and its near real-time capability allows data to be used for surveillance. Thus, data is always current. The essential components and functions of NPDES are 1, data collection, 2, data repository, 3, reports, and 4, surveillance. In 2024, NPDES cataloged over 2.4 million encounters. 87% were human exposures, 12% information requests, and 1% animal exposures. The data upload interval was 4.88 minutes, with a 25% 4.43 to a 75% 9.93 range. The top 3 substances in all human exposures were analgesics, cleaning substances, and antidepressants. The system recorded almost 2,000 human fatalities. NPDES is not a denominator of all U.S. poisoning exposures, but it is a barometer of poison exposure. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Justin Arnold, and I'm the Medical Director of the Florida Poison Information Center, Tampa, and today I'm excited to talk to you about a poison center's perspective on an outbreak of Brodifocum-contaminated synthetic cannabinoids that occurred in Florida, December 2021. I currently serve as a medical toxicologist and the medical director for the Florida Poison Information Center, Tampa, as well as an associate professor at the University of South Florida Department of Emergency Medicine. I have no disclosures. The Florida Poison Information Center, Tampa, is one of 3 poison centers in the state of Florida, and we cover the area in blue, which consists of 16 counties, 94 hospitals, and approximately 7.4 million people. Last year, we managed over 39,000 human exposures, and we have a staff of 5 toxicologists, 13 full-time poison specialists, and 3 poison information providers. We operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. In the event that we have any difficulties, we have backup coverage provided by the other Florida poison centers in Jacksonville and Miami. And if the entire state is affected, we have 2 out-of-region poison centers that can also assist in taking calls. We're located at Tampa General Hospital, and we're primarily grant funded through the state of Florida and federal HRSA grants. We prepare for disaster and surge situations by deploying remote workstations for all of our employees, as well as surge stations within the poison center itself. We have the ability to expand our capacity to other Florida poison centers, as well as to easily share records and transfer cases through our electronic medical record system. We also have a separate 800 number that we can activate at any time to use in addition to the National Poison Helpline number 1-800-222-1222. We also rely heavily on our partners, both regionally and at the state and federal levels. During this event, we worked closely with the Hillsborough and Pinellas County Health Departments, as well as local law enforcement. We also worked very closely with the Florida Department of Health, as well as other federal resources such as CDC, DEA Tox, FDA, and several private entities. Briefly, the event came to light on Friday, December 3rd, 2021, when we noticed 2 patients at different hospitals presenting with abnormal bleeding. Both patients reported a history of synthetic cannabinoid use. The following morning, we began receiving several calls from other hospitals with similar cases of severe bleeding. Upon questioning by the poison specialist, it was determined that all of the patients also reported synthetic cannabinoid use. All of these patients were also from hospitals within a single county. This was very reminiscent of a similar event that occurred in Chicago 2018 that involved 164 cases over 15 counties and included several deaths. Synthetic cannabinoids, or spice, is a drug that's rather dissimilar to plant cannabis but does bind to the same receptors. The drug binds with a much greater intensity, causing more significant clinical effects. The chemical is produced in the laboratory and sprayed on plant material, after which it's smoked. Users tend to gravitate towards this product since it's inexpensive and not routinely detected on drug screens. Early in the event, we worked with DEA Tox laboratories to identify the specific synthetic cannabinoid and anticoagulant present in the drug itself. We sincerely appreciated their assistance. These synthetic cannabinoids were contaminated with a long-acting rodenticide anticoagulant called Brodifocum. This product is similar to the blood thinner warfarin, though it is about 100 times as potent and lasts several months. Similar to warfarin, it is monitored through a PT/INR blood test and treated with vitamin K, though at much higher doses. Clinically, patients presented with unexplained bleeding, including hematuria, hematemesis, bleeding from the gingiva and vagina, as well as melena and easy bruising. INR measurements in all the patients were immeasurably high. Patients were managed by emergent correction using high doses of the vitamin K, as well as fresh frozen plasma and 4-factor prothrombin complex concentrates. Patients then required high-dose oral vitamin K for several months until their bradifocum concentrations were less than 10 nanograms per milliliter. To give perspective, these patients were receiving up to 150 milligrams of oral vitamin K daily, compared to 2.5 to 10 milligram doses that are oftentimes required to reverse warfarin. This event went on for several months and did require collaboration with several partners. Our Poison Center reached out via a national medical director listserv to discuss our initial findings, and consequently, we received support and guidance from the Illinois Poison Center on how they managed their event. We met quickly with the Department of Health, as well as local law enforcement, and maintained frequent meetings. We worked to disseminate the information through using faxes sent to emergency departments at local hospitals. The Department of Health also provided letters to clinicians, press releases, and other outreach materials. We also disseminated this information in a CDC MMWR report. We worked closely with DEA Tox and NMS laboratories to identify and quantify both synthetic cannabinoids implicated, as well as the bradifocum concentrations in our patients. We sincerely appreciated their assistance early in the investigation. Finally, treatment was challenging as some patients required up to 8 months of medication and close follow-up. We did reach out to several pharmaceutical companies, and Amneal Pharmaceuticals donated a large amount of vitamin K, which was crucial for our patients, as many were homeless, uninsured, and the retail pharmacy prescriptions oftentimes exceeded a cost of $30,000 per month per patient. We utilized a single hospital pharmacy to fill and distribute the medications that were donated and relied on county healthcare plans and federally qualified health centers to provide the outpatient follow-up care. In the end, we managed a total of 52 cases, of which resulted in 4 fatalities. The duration of the event exceeded 8 months. From the Poison Center perspective, we recognized several aspects of the response that went very well. Due to our relationship with local hospitals, many clinicians quickly reached out to poison control so that the event could be identified quickly. A nationwide listserv was used to describe the event early, and several poison centers reached out to collaborate and share their experiences. Both statewide and County Florida Health Department epidemiologists promptly responded to my phone calls and organized a work group consisting of poison control, public health officials, law enforcement, and other key players. Again, we reached out to several very specialized laboratories, which provided free analysis or at-cost analysis with very rapid turnaround times. This helped immensely in confirming the exposure, which allowed us to confidently move forward with treatment. Again, the vitamin K supply was one of our biggest challenges, given the high doses and limited ability to pay for several of our patients. The pharmaceutical donation really helped us care for all the affected individuals. And finally, my Poison Center staff went well above and beyond our normal operations to help coordinate a very challenging response to assure the patients were followed and treated appropriately even after the initial days of the event. There certainly were challenges, however. As I mentioned, the vitamin K supply was very difficult to manage. Many hospitals had a limited supply of vitamin K and could not discharge patients with the vitamin K supply in hand. Outpatient pharmacies oftentimes did not have the large supplies, and again, the cost would exceed $30,000 per month per patient. The doses of vitamin K were also only available in 5 milligram tablets, which presented a challenge given the large doses that were required. Additionally, there was limited information sharing from law enforcement given their ongoing investigation, which was understandable, yet still challenging. And finally, follow-up was a significant challenge given many patients were homeless, difficult to contact, afraid to be legally prosecuted, or had difficulty with transportation. Going forward, I believe there are opportunities to establish more long-term interactions between poison centers and departments of health, as well as local law enforcement. Additionally, identifying specific resources related to laboratory testing, assistance with medications, transportation, outpatient clinic availability, and long-term drug treatment for patients involved should be priorities. Finally, I do believe this event was a great example of several health entities coming together to rapidly identify, stop, and successfully manage a very challenging mass poisoning event. I appreciate your time and attention.
Hello, my name is Dr. Prakash Mulay. I'll be presenting a public health perspective on coagulopathy associated with broadifacum poisoning among residents of Florida. I serve as a surveillance epidemiologist for the Florida Department of Health and have no disclosures to make. To provide some background, the Florida Department of Health functions as a state health agency with a central state office located in Tallahassee. It oversees 67 local county health departments, 8 children's medical services area offices, 12 medical quality assurance regional offices, 9 disability determination regional offices, and 3 public health laboratories. These slides contain my contact information for any follow-up inquiries. During this presentation, I will cover an overview of Brody-Facum poisoning incident, the public health surveillance efforts undertaken, and the outcomes of our investigation. Additionally, I will discuss the challenges encountered in patient care and the strategies implemented to address them. As highlighted in the previous presentation, Brody-Facum is a highly toxic, long-acting anticoagulant rodenticide. Its mechanism of action is similar to warfarin, and exposure may lead to hemorrhages and death from vitamin K-dependent factor depletion. Treatment for Brody-Facum poisoning requires both the replacement of coagulation factors and prolonged administration of vitamin K therapy. On December 4, 2021, the Florida Department of Health in Hillsborough County was notified by the Florida Poison Information Center, Tampa, about 3 patients presenting with unexplained bleeding who also had a history of synthetic cannabinoid use. Hillsborough County, also known as Tampa Region, is the 4th most populous county in Florida with approximately 1.5 million residents. Department of Health in Hillsborough County promptly initiated an epidemiological investigation. Our primary goal were to identify additional cases, determine exposure pathways, and provide clinical guidance. By December 7, epidemiology program managers from surrounding counties, Pinellas, Pasco, and Polk, were informed, along with emergency department physicians from major hospitals, including Tampa General Hospital, St. Joseph Hospital, and Advent Health. Case definition was adopted from a similar nationwide outbreak in 2018. Investigators conducted patient interviews and medical record reviews to gather demographic information, clinical symptoms, synthetic cannabinoid or other drug use history, product purchase locations, and evidence of other anticoagulant exposure. Enhanced surveillance efforts included data analysis from the Syndromic Surveillance System, also known as Essence Florida, which monitors emergency department and urgent care data for potential new cases. Additionally, a pharmaceutical company provided a donation of vitamin K to aid in patient treatment. All identified cases reported symptoms onset in November and December 2021, with the peak occurring on December 1st. Most cases exhibited symptom onset between November 29 and December 7. Among the 52 reported cases, the average age was 36 years, ranging from 16 to 63 years. A total of 40 cases were male. The majority of affected individuals were African American and Hispanic. Out of the 52 cases, 43 were classified as confirmed and 9 as probable. A total of 38 patients were interviewed. Unfortunately, 4 individuals died of Brody-Facum poisoning. Several key factors contributed to poor patient outcomes, including lack of health insurance and financial barriers to treatment. Approximately 2/3 of affected individuals were uninsured, with only 9 cases covered by Medicaid. Additionally, 15 patients were experiencing homelessness and 21 cases were lost to follow. Treatment for Brody-Facum poisoning necessitated both oral and intravenous vitamin K. Discharged patients required prolonged therapy at high doses, like 150 milligrams per day, for a duration of 3 to 6 months. However, the lack of insurance coverage posed significant challenges as the cost of outpatient vitamin K therapy exceeded $65,000 per month per patient. Due to these financial constraints, 19 patients did not fill their outpatient prescription for vitamin K. Effective management of this outbreak required a collaborative effort among healthcare providers, public health agencies, and pharmaceutical partners. Stakeholders' engagement played a crucial role in the rapid identification of contaminant, securing medication assistance, and ensuring continued patient follow-up. Regular meetings between Department of Health and Poison Control Center facilitated information sharing and the development of provider guidance. The nationwide shortage of vitamin K necessitated outreach to pharmaceutical companies, which ultimately lead to donation of vitamin K tablets from Amneal Pharmaceuticals. Distribution of these tablets was coordinated with the Tampa General Hospital outpatient pharmacy, ensuring that patients received the medication at no cost. Confirmatory testing for body fat presented an additional challenge due to its high cost and lack of insurance coverage. At least 3 sequential quantitative tests were required to determine appropriate treatment duration. Fortunately, the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, laboratory provided these tests at no cost. Post-discharge follow-up was critical for ensuring treatment adherence. Hillsborough County residents without insurance were enrolled in the Hillsborough County Healthcare Plan, which provides medical coverage for low-income individuals. A total of 12 patients were successfully enrolled in this healthcare plan, and their outpatient care was coordinated with federally qualified healthcare centers. These centers served as primary care providers, facilitated laboratory testing, and issued vitamin K prescriptions. To raise awareness and promote preventive measures, infographics were adopted from the Illinois Department of Public Health and were distributed in high incidence area. On December 7, relevant information was disseminated to local health departments and physicians. Additionally, a nationwide EpiX alert was issued on December 9, followed by an update on December 28. A press release was issued on December 10 to inform the public about the situation. Subsequently, a provider notification regarding vitamin K availability was released on December 30. Findings from this investigation were later published in the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, contributing valuable insight to public health literature. In conclusion, this outbreak highlighted significant barriers to optimal patient care, including lack of health insurance, homelessness, and the high cost and limited availability of vitamin K. Despite prior experience with a similar outbreak in 2018, these challenges persisted. The expertise of Poison Control Center in clinical toxicology played a crucial role in ensuring a coordinated clinical response. Additionally, the established collaboration between Department of Health and Poison Control Center facilitated a timely and organized approach to managing this outbreak. Moving forward, key strategies for mitigating future outbreaks of brodifacoum poisoning include improving patient access to care, securing sustainable medication assistance, and enhancing laboratory diagnostic capabilities. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Bronstein, Dr. Arnold, and Dr. Mulay. So that was a very interesting presentation, and we already received a couple of questions. There is a question that maybe was asked very soon. I think it has been partially answered, but it's from Meriday. Was the product tested for level of brodifacoum? So you mentioned the cost of testing it.
Yes, yeah. So we initially received qualitative testing because we didn't know which anticoagulant it was. So we tested it kind of broadly, qualitatively, and then some of our partners were able to quantify it, which was very helpful because we really had some patients that had very mildly elevated concentrations, and we had some that were very, very, very high. So it was helpful in allowing us to understand how long we'd have to treat some of these individuals.
Perfect, thank you. We have another question here. Was any of the public health messaging targeted towards homeless shelters specifically? Oh, interesting.
We did. We had some partners with the county health department that actually went out and tried to target some of the homeless populations. We also conducted interviews, or the Department of Health did, with the patients themselves, and they shared resources for them to take back when they were discharged. So we did try to kind of target that community specifically.
The first documented case was in 2018 in Illinois. How quick and timely was the communication between the different states and poison centers, especially when shortage with vitamin K would be crucial? Was Florida better prepared?
So the communication between poison centers happened pretty quickly. We saw this pattern the first two patients that Friday evening, and that certainly raised our concerns. And then once we started receiving additional calls the following morning, we reached out to the Department of Health in Florida, and I also sent an email out to a national listserv that we have between poison centers, and very quickly got responses particularly from the Illinois Poison Center about their experience and who they used at the time to test, and they also sent some treatment guidelines that they had set up at the time. So that was actually very helpful, and we got a very quick response that really I attribute to that listserv that we have. I mean, that's monitored pretty carefully. I don't know that we were necessarily better prepared with the vitamin K supply than they were in Chicago. These are pretty isolated incidents, to be honest with you, and I don't know that with the infrequency of these events that most states are really prepared to invest in stockpiles of vitamin K that would be required for this. So that was the challenge. And what we found with the vitamin K in particular was we had some hospitals who had supplies of it. We had several patients who went to a single hospital. So we had a few hospitals that were managing 4 or 5 patients at a time with very high doses. And early on, we really had no great course to discharge the patients because we did not want to discharge them without having vitamin K supply available because we knew that they would become coagulopathic again. So initially, obtain the vitamin K supply and coordinating discharging patients with vitamin K was really challenging. And that's really when we started to work on reaching out to the different pharmaceutical companies to see if they could either increase the supply or increase provide a donation. We were met with one company that really came through and supplied enough vitamin K for us to treat all the patients for the duration of the event. And that was really the biggest relief in this whole event for us was being able to attain that vitamin K supply. But I don't know that how feasible it is to really prepare this much vitamin K everywhere. But I think kind of this experience of reaching out to the pharmaceutical companies, I think I would have almost done this earlier. If I had this event pop up tomorrow, I would get on that very fast.
Is there any kind of public laboratory that anyone can bring street substances to be tested without penalization?
So testing was a challenge, and there are a few laboratories. I can speak for the United States that there's very few laboratories that will, outside of law enforcement, specifically test products this broadly. We reached out to DEA Tox, and the team there was phenomenal at helping us, helping receive the products, test the actual product itself, and then get us the results back very quickly. And so that was really helpful as far as testing the product. We used another laboratory called NMS, which does pretty extensive biologic testing, so we could test the patient's samples, and they were very helpful as far as determining the bradificum as the etiology and also quantifying it going forward. So those 2 labs really were helpful for us, but there's not a lot of labs that I'm aware of that will test product outside of a lot of the law enforcement realms.
We have another question here. The importance of pharmaceutical companies are well shown in this case. Are they always included as part of the emergency response, or is that on case-by-case basis?
We have a national stockpile for drugs that are needed on an emergency basis. So vitamin K is not one of them. We try to reach out during this incident to national stockpile to see if we can obtain any additional drug quickly and without any commitment to the cost and also. And we were told they don't have anything. So that's where we try to involve pharmaceutical companies. We reached out to several pharmaceutical companies, and one of them came up with this idea of donating us and all. So, but as such, I don't think they are part of our routine emergency management. It just we reached out and we appreciate their partnership in this event. In future, I don't know if that's the feasible route. Like we need to find something which is more sustainable. Like there was a proposal to have a national stockpile of higher dose of vitamin K, and that's for the futures to decide. But that was one of the suggestions that came out of this event.
Yes, routinely pharmaceutical companies, unfortunately or fortunately, are not part of the emergency response, and they would be involved on a case-by-case basis. There have been some attempts for national antidote stockpiles, but anyway, it's case by case.
Makes total sense. There's a question for everyone. So how well do all the poison centers in the US communicate during major outbreak? Is there an already existing communication system?
We do have, like I said, several listservs that communicate. We have a central office for all of America's poison centers that does coordinate things like this. And that communication, I think, either through the listservs or communicating through our central office gets disseminated very, very quickly to all the poison centers.
So I wanted to just talk about NPDS, National Poison Data System. And the CDC, Center for Disease Control, have some access to the NPDS, which oversees all the states. And the time to time, I get an email alert from them. Oh, in your state, I see these 7 cases with this, and would you please follow up? And like being in the health department, sometimes that helps to get in that alert early and then reaching out to the poison control. So there is some system in place. However, I think a lot of state health departments, they are directly collaborating with their local poison control centers and having some syndromic surveillance enhance their capability to look at the data as it goes. Like in Florida, like we have every 10 minutes data get uploaded into our syndromic surveillance system called Essence, ESSENCE, which is a syndromic surveillance system, electronic system, and we can look at poison control center data almost like near real time to monitor for specific alerts. So, and we are lucky, not every state have that capability, but there are some capabilities nationally.
Typically, if there is an event and the product, for instance, is not in the database, we can create an emergent product code, and we send that out to all the poison centers with coding guidance for how to code those cases. So that's one way that there's communication between the poison centers, which is moderated by this, say, through the central office, the association. Poison centers, of course, will talk to each other as well. And then through NPDS, the surveillance, which Prakash was alluding to, if there is an anomaly that's deemed to be public health significant, then an alert is usually sent by the CDC to the respective state health department. So we have a lot of different ways to communicate between and among the poison centers.
We have another question here from Howard. So how long to know an anticoagulant was involved and how? And then how long to know the specific one?
So we had a high suspicion, again, just based on the historical event that happened in Chicago, that this was what was happening. It was the same scenario of uncontrolled bleeding, high INRs associated with smoking synthetic cannabinoids. So we had a very high suspicion this is what was going on. We reached out, like I said, to a few different laboratories and coordinated getting samples sent pretty quickly. I think they were probably sent out that Monday morning. And what was really nice about this event in particular was we didn't just order the lab test and wait for it to come back. I was able to reach out to some of the directors for these laboratories and explain what was going on. And they said, we will be happy to run this right now, and I will call you with the results. And so I would say from the time the samples were shipped until we got the preliminary results was probably 2 days, because these labs are quite a ways away from where we're at in Florida. But it was 2 days, and I got a phone call each time we tested with a different agency. So it was pretty quickly. And we did, like I said, we did a panel of anticoagulant testing. So we had, there might have been 6 or 7 or 8 common anticoagulants, redundant set of anticoagulants that were part of the panel that was available before this event happened through the one laboratory. So we were able to fortunately, it hit one of those that was on there, which was Brodifficum, and we actually knew we were looking for Brodifficum from the beginning, and that was on the test. So we had an idea that would hopefully come back positive. So then after that, we moved on to working on kind of raising an assay to quantify it, which actually was a little more difficult to get that going. But the qualitative testing was very quick, and I think it was because we worked with the labs closely.
We have the time for probably 2 other questions. So were any missing cases, affected individuals that did not seek treatment for whatever reason, identified postmortem from state death records statistical information?
I don't think we missed any cases because we reached out to our medical examiner's office for reporting any unusual deaths. And we looked at we have access to our death data, so we looked at that as well. And also we reached out to the surrounding county health departments to look out for any suspicious bleeding disorders, because it's very specific. With Brodifficum, the symptomatology is very specific and very severe. So it's hard to miss that kind of severe bleeding, in a patient. And so we reached out to surrounding counties, hospitals. We sent out some communications to the hospital through their network, and that way, like, all the cases get reported. There were some reported bleedings that were not classified as a case because they were unrelated to the synthetic cannabinoid exposure or the Brodifficum exposures. But I believe we did pretty thorough search, like active surveillance, specifically just to look for any additional cases. But always there's always possibility if somebody never gets reported, like, if somebody dies and they classified for some other conditions than hemorrhages.
And one of the cases we had that resulted in a fatality was a patient that we had identified earlier in the hospital who left against medical advice, stopped treatment, and then we were notified later by the medical examiner that the patient had presented and they had a suspicion, and then we reconciled that was a patient that we had identified earlier in the event. So we do know that the communication between the medical examiners and our teams worked.
This is a classic example of where NPDS and the poison centers may not have the denominator, but it certainly is the barometer of the event. So, which is very, very important, obviously.
We have time for one last question. So of the patients who were lost to follow-up or did not fill a prescription for vitamin K, is it known if any represented with coagulopathy?
So yes, we had actually numerous patients represent, particularly early in the event, because, like I said, we had patients that we were able to stabilize in the hospital, but we were having difficulty obtaining the vitamin K supply for them to be discharged with. And several of them stayed in the hospital for several days after they were stabilized, simply waiting for us to figure out how to provide them with vitamin K, and many just left. And so we had several of those patients return later to the hospital with additional bleeding, and they were treated again. I think we even had maybe 2 or 3 patients represent several times and discharged several times. So we definitely had that. One of our other fatalities that we had was a patient who presented with bleeding, was treated, discharged, and came back with an intracranial hemorrhage. And so that was kind of one of the more unfortunate ones of the patients that left. But yeah, we had several that represented.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again, Dr. Bronstein, Arnold, and Mulay. So thank you very much. Very appreciated. And as I mentioned previously, so we will have additional time to cover the questions that are still pending. So they are not going to be lost. We'll keep track of them, and they are going to be, we'll have the opportunity to submit them next week during our town hall session that is going to be on February 20th. The second case study from United States in our final presentation of the day is on paralytic shellfish poisoning that occurred on the coast of Oregon in May 2024. This will be presented by Dr. Rob Hendrickson, a professor and emergency medicine toxicology fellowship director and medical director of the Oregon Poison Center. It's going to be also delivered by Mr. Terrence Gilbreth, a council of state and territorial epidemiologists applied epidemiology follow on the Oregon Health Authority.
Hi, my name is Rob Hendrickson, and I'm a medical toxicologist practicing in Portland, Oregon, and I'm the medical director of the Oregon Poison Center. We're going to discuss an outbreak of paralytic shellfish poisoning that occurred on the coast of Oregon in May of 2024. Before getting into the details of the cases, please allow me to tell you a little bit about our Poison Center and how it functions. The Oregon Poison Center was established in 1978 to provide treatment information for patients experiencing a poisoning and to provide public outreach and education to healthcare professionals. The Oregon Poison Center is housed on the campus of a major medical and research university, the Oregon Health and Sciences University. Poison Center is funded through a combination of federal, state, and university funds. The Oregon Poison Center is a resource for healthcare and treatment information for all of the citizens of Oregon and the territory of Guam. And it operates 24/7, 365 days a year, and handles about 45,000 new cases every year, or about 123 new cases per day. The initial call is answered by a registered nurse or a pharmacist with specialized training in poison information. Medical toxicologists who are board certified and fellowship trained are on call 24/7, 365 days a year to support our specialists and for public health or hazardous materials emergencies. Most of our cases come from community members and involve toddlers, they ingesting plants, toys, household items, medications. Many of our cases are adults as well, with medication reactions, adverse effects, or accidental ingestions of medication. For most of these cases, we assess the risk of their exposure and determine if the person requires hospital-based care. If so, we refer them to the hospital and contact the hospital with treatment and evaluation recommendations. For patients that are kept at home, we call back at specified times to reevaluate them until the likelihood of signs and symptoms have passed. In this way, we serve a vital public health role by using our expertise and experience to successfully monitor 93% of our patients with accidental exposures at home rather than sending them to an already overcrowded emergency department. We also handle cases from pre-hospital agencies and emergency departments about self-harm ingestions and advise on initial care, provide medical toxicologist consultation, and send treatment protocols to the emergency department. For serious or severe cases, we follow up at the inpatient unit to continue providing treatment advice throughout the patient's hospitalization. As Dr. Bronstein mentioned previously, our cases are recorded in a medical record, which is uploaded every few minutes to the national database called NPDS. NPDS and CDC medical toxicologists have access to the NPDS data. They analyze them for anomalies, and they contact the Poison Center to determine if there's a public health concern if there is an anomaly. If we feel there's a public health concern, then the local and state public health agencies are contacted. In addition, the Oregon Poison Center grants the state's public health agency access to the Oregon cases in NPDS database for near real-time syndromic surveillance for multiple diagnoses. Now, the scenario that we will describe today as an example of Poison Center and public health agencies working together is an outbreak of paralytic shellfish poisoning, or PSP. PSP typically occurs when people ingest bivalve shellfish, including mussels and clams, that contain PSP toxins. PSP toxins, including saxitoxin, are produced by dinoflagellates and concentrate in filter-feeding bivalves. PSP toxins are not destroyed by cooking or by typical food preparation. Humans who ingest PSP toxins develop gastrointestinal and neurologic symptoms that often start with numbness and tingling of the mouth and face, which may spread to the extremities. In extreme cases, patients develop muscular paralysis and may die without medical care. Treatment is entirely supportive and may include intubation and mechanical ventilation. Our cases begin here on a small beach on the Oregon coast. At about 10 p.m. on a 3-day holiday weekend, an emergency physician contacted the Oregon Poison Center regarding a 36-year-old woman who had collected mussels on the Oregon coast. She had cooked the mussels, eaten them, and within hours experienced diarrhea, followed shortly by a tingling sensation of the mouth and numbness of the lips, tongue, and both hands, which migrated up the arm to the elbows. The Poison Center specialist connected the emergency physician with the on-call medical toxicologist who made the clinical diagnosis of PSP. She advised the emergency physician to continue observation, and discussed the expected clinical course and management. The medical toxicologist determined the location of the mussel collection and noted that those beaches were open for mussel harvesting based on previous measurements of acceptable saxitoxin concentrations. Noting the public health concern, the medical toxicologist called the county public health officers for the 2 counties closest to where the harvesting had occurred and left phone messages. The Poison Center then followed up on the patient's clinical course by calling the hospital at 2 hours, 4 hours, and 9 hours after the patient's admission. Early the next morning, a cluster of suspected paralytic shellfish poisoning was called to the Oregon Poison Center. 3 women, 39, 67, and 75 years old, all had eaten mussels at 9 p.m. the night before, developed nausea and numbness in their fingers about an hour later. All 3 had continued symptoms, and 1 had developed severe ataxia. The hospital fell within the jurisdiction of a large metropolitan area, and the on-call duty officer was contacted. The public health officer and the Poison Center medical director discussed the 4 cases and coordinated a response, including agreeing on the wording of messaging to the public and healthcare providers. The public health agency then coordinated a rapid multi-agency response, as my colleagues from public health will discuss in just a few minutes. The Oregon Poison Center sent faxes to every emergency department on the coast, as well as major cities close to where the mussels were harvested. This information included a description of signs and symptoms of paralytic shellfish poisoning, the management of paralytic shellfish poisoning, as well as a request to call the Oregon Poison Center for consultation with a medical toxicologist for any suspected cases. The Oregon Poison Center further released information through social media and on their website, as well as a media release with multiple interviews on local television and radio stations to increase public awareness. So how did we do? Well, there were many successes in the incident response. The response was very rapid. The Oregon Poison Center was able to rapidly alert public health agencies. Public health agencies were able to mobilize all major stakeholders quickly and initiate a robust response that they will describe in just a few minutes. The Oregon Poison Center detected a pattern from cases in multiple hospitals that would otherwise be very difficult to detect. Poison centers fill this real-time surveillance role in the public health system by being available to healthcare providers and to the public 24/7, 365 days a year. The Oregon Poison Center was able to get information out to the public and to healthcare providers very quickly. Poison Center is able to rapidly inform healthcare providers and do so as a known, trusted source of medical information, particularly about toxins. There were several challenges and opportunities as well. A more reliable system of reporting emergent or urgent public health cases may be desirable. The Poison Center notified the local public health agencies, but didn't get an immediate response. A robust response occurred once the county public health agency of a major city was contacted. The system worked really well, but depended on a close relationship that the Poison Center and public health agencies already have. But it's easy to predict an event where the response would have been slower with potential health effects. Both the Poison Center and public health agencies needed to develop and get approval for the wording in the alerts to the public as well as to the healthcare providers. It would be beneficial in the future for poison centers and public health agencies to coordinate ahead of time on pre-established wording for these types of predictable events. My takeaways: poison centers and public health agencies have synergistic skills, synergistic roles, and can complement each other in urgent, emergent public health responses. At this time, I will hand it off to my public health colleagues to finish the presentation.
My name is Taryn Gilbreth. I am a Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologist, or CSTE, Applied Epidemiology Fellow, assigned to the Oregon Health Authority. To make you aware of how we became aware ourselves of this outbreak, on May 25th, 2024, which is the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, Oregon Poison Center alerted Oregon Health Authority to several cases of paralytic shellfish poisoning in patients who had harvested wild mussels along the Oregon coast. For a little bit of background on paralytic shellfish poisoning in Oregon, it's a very rare phenomenon. We don't see a lot of cases of paralytic shellfish poisoning. Over the last decade, 1 case was reported in 2016, and 44 total cases were reported in 2024. Of those 44 cases, 4 were a restaurant-associated outbreak earlier in the year in 2024, and 40 were associated with our wild mussel harvesting outbreak along the Oregon coast over the summer. For our outbreak case definition, presumptive cases were defined as having consumed shellfish harvested from the Oregon coast during May 14th to July 12th, and had new onset of paresthesia or numbness of mouth within 5 hours of consuming the shellfish. In addition to presumptive cases, confirmed cases also provided leftover shellfish that tested positive for paralytic shellfish toxins. Cases were reported to Oregon Health Authority by 4 different routes, the first of which was from the Oregon Poison Center. 30 total reports came in from the Oregon Poison Center, of which 24 met our case definition. OHA fellows designed a public-facing survey designed for active case finding. A total of 1,211 responses were recorded. Of those, 10 met our case definition. 7 cases were identified as contacts or ill meal partners of cases being interviewed by local public health authorities. And 1 case was reported directly by a healthcare facility to Oregon Health Authority. This is the epidemic curve for cases in our outbreak. I have also added the routine toxin monitoring detections that were done by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Our cases were primarily reporting illness on May 25th, 26th, and 27th, which for context is the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of Memorial Day weekend. Before cases were reporting illness, there was a small toxin detection on May 23rd. This prompted localized beach closures at 2 beaches that had toxin detected. Following the outbreak, again, the routine monitoring of paralytic shellfish toxins that's done at 7 to 10 day intervals did detect a large toxin spike at multiple beaches along the Oregon coast that did prompt more widespread beach closures. And we'll talk about this again in just a moment. For our case characteristics, 42 total cases were reported. Of those, 3 were confirmed and 39 presumptive. Symptom onsets for our cases ranged between May 23rd and June 6th. Patient age for the 40 patients that reported age was 11 to 76 years of age, and patient sex was relatively evenly split with 23 males and 19 females. Cases were reported in this outbreak across 2 different states, 40 in Oregon, as I mentioned before, and then an additional 2 cases in Washington state residents. For the Oregon cases, 30 of our 40 cases were reported in what we call our Portland Tri-County area, that is Washington County, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County. In addition to those cases, we did have some cases reported as residents of coastal counties, as well as some of our more central rural counties in the state of Oregon. Symptom profiles for our cases included mouth numbness. All of our cases reported mouth numbness. 67% of our cases reported paresthesia. 43% reported muscle weakness. 40% reported a floating sensation following consumption of shellfish. And these are really the characteristic neurological symptoms that do accompany illness with paralytic shellfish poisoning. In addition to these, 33% of our cases reported nausea. 31% reported vertigo. Other reported symptoms did include vomiting, headache, and difficulty speaking or swallowing. We assessed exposures among our cases to 4 different shellfish: mussels, clams, oysters, and crabs. Of note, oysters are less commonly recreationally harvested in Oregon and are usually harvested commercially. So these would have been purchased from a restaurant or a store. But in total, for our shellfish exposures, for our cases, 85% of our cases consumed mussels, 19% consumed clams, 2% consumed oysters, and no cases reported consuming crab before becoming ill. So in addition to the epicurve, I did want to give a little bit more context on what we were seeing as far as routine monitoring of paralytic shellfish toxin results were. And highlighted in yellow on this figure is the onset range for our cases. In addition to that, we do have toxin testing results by beach. And there were a couple of detections towards this kind of end of the outbreak or before the outbreak cases were being reported that did prompt those localized closures I was talking about. And then we saw a very steep rise in toxin concentrations from routine toxin monitoring results that coincided almost directly with our cases that were reported as part of this outbreak. So this was a very rapid rise in paralytic shellfish toxin being detected at multiple beaches along the Oregon coast, which did prompt widespread closures of shellfish harvesting on the Oregon coast. In addition to routine monitoring, we did have 3 cases that did submit mussels for testing. For context, the beach closure limit in Oregon is 80 micrograms of paralytic shellfish toxins per 100 grams of shellfish meats. Mussels that were tested by our 3 cases were 14 to 68 times that level. So very, very high levels of paralytic shellfish toxin were observed in mussels submitted by cases for testing. So moving away from our outbreak and our case demographics, I wanted to talk a little bit about what our interventions were as the state health agency, the first of which was essentially getting information out about paralytic shellfish poisoning. As I mentioned, this is a relatively uncommon disease in Oregon, and so we immediately wanted to get information out about what this is, what symptoms are accompanied with disease, how it can be prevented, and what to do if you are experiencing the symptoms of paralytic shellfish poisoning. OHA fellows designed a focused questionnaire to assess demographic and clinical information of illness, as well as detailed information on shellfish exposures among our cases. We did build that focused questionnaire into a SurveyMonkey platform for 2 purposes. The first of which was to be distributed to shellfish license holders and the general public in the state of Oregon to complete active case finding, essentially look for more cases that may not have been reported to the Poison Center or other avenues. And also as a data entry, a database builder for our interviews that were being done by both local and state public health agencies. And so the idea was, as we're doing our interviews as health agencies, they can be guided by this survey, which was ultimately our focused questionnaire. And we're collecting the same data that's being collected as part of our active case finding process. The next bit of information that went out was a 1-page fact sheet for our local public health authorities. And again, because this is such a rare disease in Oregon, we wanted to get information out about what is paralytic shellfish poisoning, how should we be interviewing cases, what exposures should we be looking for, and ultimately how we respond to an outbreak or a case of paralytic shellfish poisoning. Similar to this information, we also designed a 1-page fact sheet for the general public, getting more information out essentially about what is paralytic shellfish poisoning, how to know if you have the disease, and what steps to take following a potential diagnosis. This fact sheet was translated into several different languages. Those are listed here at the right of the screen. But the goal was to equitably reach populations that may not speak English. So translated into several different languages and distributed accordingly. The last thing we did as part of this response was actually take a trip to the coast and visit some of the beaches that our cases had reported harvesting shellfish from. What we were looking for was any signage that was up about essentially warning about toxic shellfish being in the area. And you will notice in the figure on the left that there was a sign at some of the beaches that we did go to. However, it's kind of hard to pick that sign out on the kind of bulletin board that is notifying people as they walk down to the beach. In addition to that, in some cases, signs were up, but they were kind of off the beaten path of getting down to the beach. And so it is possible that even though they were more visible, they may have been missed as people were walking down to the beach. So to conclude, 42 cases of paralytic shellfish poisoning were associated with this outbreak. This is the largest outbreak of PSP recorded in Oregon. Holiday travel, more people going to the coast, and the kind of constraints of standard toxin monitoring likely contributed to the high number of cases. It does take time to get samples from the more rural beaches of Oregon to our lab where they're being tested. And the mouse bioassays that are used to do this kind of lab analysis are relatively resource and time intensive. And so there is a kind of lag that can lead to toxin accumulation results lagging behind cases that are reported. Mussels containing high concentrations of paralytic shellfish toxin were the implicated vehicle. And then again, kind of characteristic with the neurological symptoms that go along with paralytic shellfish poisoning, numbness of mouth, paresthesia, muscle weakness, and a floating sensation were the most reported symptoms by our cases. For our outbreak response strengths, Poison Control very quickly notified Oregon Health Authority of the potential cases that were associated with this outbreak, and that very quickly enabled Oregon Health Authority to put together a very strong multi-agency response in response to this outbreak. Public health notifications quickly followed in this multi-agency response. These were notifications of illness risk, and we wanted to basically get them out as quick as possible. And beaches following this were quickly closed to harvest. Our new case investigation tool was a resource that was deployed and implemented within 1 week of kind of the outbreak impetus, or when it was reported to us. And again, this was our public-facing survey. It did capture 10 cases that would not have been reported to public health or the Poison Center by standard disease surveillance methods. On this same note of our survey response, the response format through SurveyMonkey did lead to some kind of complicated data analysis problems. And so post-response, we really wanted to focus on, well, what worked with this survey and what didn't work with this survey, and how can we update it for the next response? And so we did lead a review of the focus questionnaire that was deployed with SurveyMonkey, and we were able to address those data quality concerns for use in future outbreaks and responses. And so that is ready to go. It has been updated following our response. Partnerships with Department of Fish and Wildlife and Department of Agriculture in the future should encourage increased visibility of beach closure signage and language accessibility. As public health, we will continue to move forward on relationship building with our partner agencies to kind of make these a focus of our future response to paralytic shellfish poisoning outbreaks. And lastly, we do want to acknowledge that this was not a single agency responding to this outbreak. This was a multi-agency response across 2 different states. And so we certainly want to say thank you to our partners that helped make this investigation possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Hendrickson and Mr. Gilbreth. So very comprehensive presentation. And it reminds me similar cases that we went through recently in Canada. So a very interesting one. And I can see that there are already some questions that were raised. So the first one, which is the most popular one, is there any indication as to what caused the toxins to rise so rapidly?
So there were some hypotheses that were kind of considered by Oregon Health Authority, and it's really unknown what caused the rapid kind of rise in toxin production along the coast. One of the hypotheses was that a reservoir flush basically into the Columbia River, which is the border of Washington and Oregon, the northern end of the Oregon coast, may have caused this. But we had toxin detections kind of all up and down the coast. And so while this incident was kind of isolated to the northern end of the coast, given that we had toxin detections all along the coast, it seems less likely that that would have been the cause. And so just an unknown set of factors led to this kind of rapid production of toxin, and then, of course, the accumulation in shellfish.
We have another question here. Would you be able to describe your surveillance definition, and have you had to change it to reduce false positives?
Yeah, so the outbreak case definition that we used for this was based off of the Council on State and Territorial Epidemiologists case definition. And of course, we did have to adapt it just a little bit for this response, but Oregon at the time did not have investigative guidelines posted for paralytic shellfish poisoning. And so that was the reason we kind of pivoted to use the CSTE definition. But yeah, based on that CSTE definition, we wanted to capture, of course, the neurologic symptoms that go along with paralytic shellfish poisoning in kind of the timeline that would be expected for those to develop following consumption of contaminated shellfish. I did not catch the last part of that question.
And have you had to change it to reduce false positives?
So I think it's been, as we develop our investigative guidelines, which we're actually still in the process of developing, it's going to be standardized back with that CSTE case definition to kind of reflect that in a non-outbreak response. You know, generally in Oregon, this is our case definition that's used for paralytic shellfish poisoning outside of an outbreak that's happening. So as we continue to develop those, we'll review any changes that are needed. But right now, it does reflect the CSTE definition.
Perfect. Was the Poison Center involved in the discussions on closing and reopening of shellfish harvesting sites? So what indicator tests were used to determine that it was okay to reopen?
we were involved in the multidisciplinary conversations, but we definitely left the decision whether to close a beach to harvesting or open it to, I think it was Fish and Wildlife makes that decision. But when we initiated this conversation, there were multiple agencies involved, all of the ones that Taryn listed on the back at the end of the last slide of his presentation. So we were involved in that conversation, but no, we were not advising based on toxin concentrations in mussels or anything like that. We leave that to our Department of Fish and Wildlife colleagues.
Was any hospital overwhelmed with the number of patients, or were the 42 cases distributed between different hospitals?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And it turns out that there was 1 or 2 hospitals that saw a pretty large number of these cases, which is kind of interesting because they were quite distant from the coast. So, they were in probably 60 miles from the coast. But we did have a couple that had, I don't remember the numbers offhand, but I think we had 1 hospital that had 9 or 10 of those cases. It just seems like coincidence because all of these people were traveling to the coast for the long weekend and then coming back home and going to the hospital. So not really sure why, but I don't remember the total number of hospitals, but there was a pretty large number of hospitals that our cases were distributed amongst. So, and I think that's one of the powers of poison centers, right? And syndromic surveillance, right? You're not relying on one single emergency physician to make all these connections. Multiple hospitals call the poison center, and so we were able to see patterns prior to them being obvious to any individual.
Given infrequency of this exposure and acute signs and symptoms, were clinicians provided with info, awareness of events, signs, symptoms, etc., similar as what was done for public health and general public notifications?
So you're asking about how we informed healthcare providers to make the diagnosis, basically. Yeah. So that initial conversation that I had with the duty officer, we agreed upon a basic initial plan. And one of the powers of poison centers, I think, is we're able to communicate pretty rapidly with hospitals, healthcare providers, and the public as well, because we do so on a near continuous basis. And so we agreed upon a plan that involves sending information to all of the area hospitals with what paralytic shellfish, the fact that paralytic shellfish poisoning cases were identified. What is the pattern to look for? What are the signs, the symptoms? What sort of shellfish cause paralytic shellfish poisoning? This is before we were able to gather all the information that we eventually gathered for this particular outbreak, but based on previous histories and previous cases and outbreaks. So we were able to inform people. And then, of course, part of that is asking, as sort of an active surveillance, asking those emergency departments to contact the poison center to report that case, and also to get toxicology consultation, but also to report that case so that we can. And I think the poison center in this case, and I think in many cases, kind of serves as a little bit of a bridge until the much more robust public health response really kicks into gear and is able to collect data much more efficiently and things like that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I think once that messaging had been decided on, we kind of standardized it on the state public health department end, and it was sent out the next day. So we received the report on May 25th, and as of May 26th, a health alert network notification did go out in Oregon about this is paralytic shellfish poisoning. These are the symptoms you should look for. This is how you should identify it. And these are where you should be reporting your cases to local public health authorities, the poison center, directly to Oregon Health Authority. And then all of our local public health authorities, our county health agencies, were able to additionally kind of boost that health alert network notification to their individual provider networks that are localized to their areas of the state.
We have the time for a another question. So, was there any future monitoring established to see if there's any changes over time, and probably for reopening? So it's a bit linked to the previous question that we got sooner, but yeah, any future monitoring?
I believe, of course, the beach cutoff limit for paralytic shellfish toxin, the limit essentially to closed beaches is 80 micrograms per 100 grams of shellfish meat. And that's what that routine 7 to 10 day testing windows kind of monitor for. I believe to open the beaches back up on those regular intervals, 2 negative tests or tests below the closure limit are needed to open the beaches back to harvesting. But again, that decision is made by our Department of Fish and Wildlife colleagues.
I will add that I'm not sure if this is the question or not, but there's regular testing of the shellfish on the beach. But once an elevated concentration was detected, the testing period was much shorter. So they were testing more frequently. They weren't doing testing every 7 to 10 days. They were testing on a more regular basis.
I have the time for one last question. So is PSP similar in toxicity to palytoxin? I'm assuming the best way to treat is supportive care.
Yeah, there's no specific treatment. For most of our patients, it was just observation. Really, we were observing them for muscle weakness, progression of muscle weakness. And the intervention would then simply be intubation with mechanical ventilation. So no specific treatment. We have two, regionality is really important. So we have a few shellfish poisonings that we can get in Oregon. One of them that might be confused might be like neurotoxic shellfish poisoning, but we don't really have that in Oregon. So most of what we have is domoic acid and saxitoxin. So at least from a human standpoint, so the differential becomes a little bit easier when you have all of those neurologic symptoms, and the tingling in the face really does seem to be quite consistent and very, very, I think it was 100% of our cases here. And I think that's been true of other reported cases too. So it's important to make the clinical diagnosis early so that you can do the muscle testing and close the beaches for harvesting and all of that type of stuff. Because the testing itself is going to take quite a while. And certainly biological samples we weren't able to get those. We weren't able to get those testing at all.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Hendrickson. Thank you very much, Mr. Gilbreth, and also Dr. Bronstein for this excellent presentation, and also be available for this quick Q&A session. It was our last presentation. So for the closing remarks, I would like to invite Mr. Robbie Kamenayer, the Deputy Director of Chemicals, Toxicology, and Environmental Hazards at the UK Health Security Agency. Robbie is also fulfilling the role of co-chair on the Chemical Event Working Group of GHSI. I know him very well, and most of the time when I talk to him, I call him Rob. So sorry, Robbie, for your family name. I will practice it. Over to you, Robbie.
Very many thanks, Claude. Hello, as Claude has said, I'm Robbie Kamenayer. I'm one of the co-chairs of the GHSI Chemical Events Working Group. If you do need more information on the Chemical Event Working Group or GHSI, please do see the video of last week's initial seminar, which is available on the infopoison.canada website, where you'll also find the presentations from last week, and shortly the presentations from today will also be included. Firstly, my thanks to all the presenters for their excellent and engaging presentations, as illustrated by the volume and breadth of questions, so thanks as well to the participants. A few of the themes I identified across the presentations included the importance of partnership working, not just between poison centres and public health agencies, nationally and internationally, but more broadly with law enforcement, regulatory bodies, government departments, and industry. Toxicovigilance, early identification of issues, as well as the need for post-incident follow-up and surveillance. Alerting and communication across health professionals, the importance of acceptance and implementation of clinical treatment guidelines was highlighted in our first presentation from Thailand. Public messaging, how do we effectively warn and inform? Where do we find the balance? What's the effectiveness of different channels? Training and exercising was a theme, around our capabilities for chemical incident response, and then finally, laboratory testing capabilities, as well as environmental monitoring was a theme that carried through a number of the presentations. I'm really looking forward to the final symposium session next week on Thursday the 20th, where we'll hear from Leslie Onion from WHO, Mark Halewood from OECD, as well as hearing from all the presenters to review and further discuss the successes, challenges, and potential solutions to strengthen best practice for response to chemical incidents. As Claude has mentioned several times, we'll review all the questions that have been submitted across the last 2 days, and we'll aim to theme them and feed them into the discussions next week. So really looking forward to having you all join us in a week's time to engage in a town hall session with our presenters to delve a bit deeper into some of the areas where we can improve overall. Finally, my thanks again to all the presenters, especially to those of you for whom it's now very, very late in the evening. My gratitude to Claude for his excellent moderation, Lydia and the team from NCCEH and the Secretariat from ChemTD at Health Canada for all their hard work in successfully delivering the seminars. It's run really well today, so congrats to you all. And my thanks to all the participants and presenters for a thoroughly enjoyable day. On that note, I will bid you all goodbye and see you hopefully next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.